Constellation is sponsored by DraftKings, where you can bet some cash and hopefully win even more by betting on our beloved American sport of football. Download DraftKings now and use the code Constellation to sign up. New customers can take home $200 in bonus bets instantly just for betting $5. That's code Constellation, CONSTELLATION, only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. That's 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling at 888-789-7777 or by visiting ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort of Kansas, 21 plus age varied by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. See dkng.com/football for eligibility, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. Constellation is sponsored by Mint Mobile and their affordable phone plans for talk, text, and data. After all, if you're with one of the big wireless companies we all know about, chances are you're paying more than you have to for what you get. And in many cases, you're paying way more. But Mint Mobile wants to help ameliorate that overpayment by providing you with high-quality service at only a fraction of the cost. To get your new unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month and get that plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/con. That's mintmobile.com/con. To cut your wireless bill to just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/con. Constellation, Last Stand Media's conversational podcast, is brought to you by you. If you want to learn how to support our podcast network, head to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Constellation, Last Stand Media's conversational podcast. My name is Colin Moriarty. Today I'm joined, and as I am always joined by my brother Dagan Moriarty. Dagan, with your Daria shirt, very distracting because I love it. I love Daria so much. It's probably one of my very favorite cartoons of all time. So good to see you wearing that gear. How are you today, my friend?
What could be more 90s? What could be more 90s than our Daria? You know what it said? This is such a random shirt. Look, it says whatever on the bottom.
Oh, it's so cool, dude. Dude, that was an iconic show. I was in high school when that came out, and everyone loved Daria.
Yeah,
it was
that was an institution.
I have a little bit of Daria in me, I think.
The character herself,
the character Daria, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. That was when MTV. That was the heyday, man. That was when it was so good.
It was like obviously Liquid Television and all that began the cartoon stuff. We've talked about that extensively. But Daria kind of came out around the time when they were starting to not really do music anymore and starting to push a lot of that stuff to MTV2. Because MTV2 during this time, absolutely a phenomenal channel. It was like 120 minutes, but all day.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
So I loved that. But yeah, Daria, because remember what were they called? Together Now or something? It was like the fake boy band that MTV did.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. Something like that.
And it was just, and Dana and I used to love that show. Our sister Dana, it was so funny. It was like a fake boy band and them living in a house, but one of them was just straight up an old dude and they never really acknowledged it. So it was like 4 handsome dudes and then it was just like one older fat guy that was in the band with them.
I forgot they were so influential with kind of everything they did back then. But if you think about it, right, Daria? I mean, The Simpsons started the sitcom cartoon. I mean, the Flintstones started it, but The Simpsons really started it in a modern way. But Daria kind of kicked in the sitcom-y, like the stuff that's all over Netflix now, like the adult cartoons, low rent visuals and animation, but rich in story and sort of very relevant, very topical, that sort of thing. But look,
I loved, what was her sister's name? Quinn.
Oh, what was
Quinn,
her name?
Right?
It was somewhere.
It was Quinn, the redhead.
Yeah, what was her name?
Quinn. I said Quinn 8,000 times. I said
Quinn. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, Quinn. Right. She was the cheerleader chick.
Yeah.
The popular
and she had like the hot friends and stuff like that. And she. Oh man, I love Daria. All right, let's move on and introduce our guests as we go around the table for Constellation today. Dustin, welcome back to the show with your Sacred Symbols shirt. I'm going to bring this up on Sacred Symbols, but you sabotaged me with the numbering of the show. Yeah, let's talk about that because.
This is actually your fault. Yeah.
What's this about?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go on.
Well, let me amend that. It's at least partially your fault. So the way that I number the show is that I look back on our Zencaster list to the previous number. And you slightly sabotage me because you labeled something Sacred Symbols plus 270. Now, I have an overall clock of what number it is. Sacred Symbols Plus is nowhere near 270.
Yeah, it's like
right
325 or something
so
right now. So I just yeah, right.
I should have saw that it said plus, but I was looking to see around. I was looking for a number that I knew approximately was in the late 200s. I saw 270, labeled the show based off of that. So it was a mislabel based off of a mislabel that you created. So I think you...
God, man, the buck really does stop with me, doesn't it? We all know it's never going to stop with you. Welcome to the show.
No, hello, everybody. Happy to be here and just, not making any mistakes at all.
Yeah.
But speaking of a mistake, Ben and Colin fall asleep for just 1 second. Dagan, live action One Piece is out. I watched 2 episodes.
Is it out?
It's out now. I watched 2 episodes. It's a little disturbing seeing, just as I expected. We've got a rubber man. We've got a clown guy that can remove his limbs from his body. And I'm curious if you're going to watch it at all.
We talked about this a little bit, but that's such an ambitious one to adopt to live action. It's so cartoony in its sensibilities and so fun and whimsical. It's dangerous, especially for TV. I know it's high budget TV, but just give me the cliff notes right now, because you and I will talk about this further, much more in depth. But good thumbs up or thumbs down so far for you?
It's okay.
Too early to tell.
It's the best anime adaptation that's ever been created. That's an extremely low bar.
Okay.
I would say it's better than I expected. But with that said, I would say it is just fine. It's fine.
It's one of those things that you celebrate for its non-live actionness. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like something that's just so fun in that medium, manga and anime, right? It's like, why? I don't know. I'm such a curmudgeon. I will be pleasantly surprised if I like it. That'll be my barometer right now.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was tuning out while reading Push Square's upcoming games for September and October while you were talking about whatever it is you were talking about. They don't have Adventures of Die. They don't have Adventures of Die in this list.
What the fuck?
Infinity Strash. Late September. I just wanted to say that real quick. All right. Ben Smith.
Yes.
Welcome back to the show.
Hello. I would like to say that unlike you and Dustin, I've never made a mistake, clearly, in my entire life.
No one in the company has ever made a mistake, as far as I'm concerned.
But I wanted to enhance for people who
I've made a lot of mistakes.
For people who don't listen to Sacred Symbols, I wanted to say not only have I not made a mistake, I enhanced this most recent episode because there was a topic about when did Colin's look transition? When did he go from glasses and no beard to no glasses and having a beard? So I labeled that section, that timestamp, when did Colin transition? Intentionally leaving out.
Yes,
and then the next segment after that, I labeled Odyssey. So, we've got the
Odyssey,
it's just one of my finest pieces of work, if I have to say
well
so
done.
myself.
Nice.
Yeah. The reference to Odyssey is Sony bought an audio company last week called Audeze, Audeze, but we were calling them Audies. Almost no one knew. And then someone's like, do you know what's called really Odyssey? And then we made fun of that for 20 minutes because that's preposterous. It's not spelled like that in any way, shape, or form. I'm not going to call it that. And then I was like, well, we just call it Odyssey.
Yeah, makes sense.
Get right in there in that Odyssey.
Yeah. Well, you took it maybe a step too far there.
Good.
Well, it's good to gather with you guys today and be here with you. We're on the precipice as we record of the weekend. It's the Memorial Day weekend. Or no, not Memorial Day, Labor Day weekend. I was like, oh shit, we're back. Oh my God, we're back in the spring.
I'm warp.
Dustin, it seemed important to you that we didn't work on Labor Day. Is this true?
Does it seem important? How do you know that?
Because you guys rescheduled the show to do it on Saturday.
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
right.
Dagan's going away.
Right.
So I
Dagan.
want to make sure that we're accounting for Dagan because he's leaving. But also Dagan, it's important, which if he wanted to take a leave of absence, that would be fine too. But it's important he wanted to be on it. So we
can't get rid of him.
I'm far too dedicated. Yeah, nice try. Nice try. I'm only going away for a day. It's not a big deal. I'll be working on Monday, life of an animator type thing, but I won't be podcasting on Monday. So
yeah, I will be working on Monday too, because there's a barbecue at Uncle Mike's, but I can't go because I have to go see Gran Turismo in preparation for the podcast. And then at 5 p.m. because I'm recording with someone in the UK who works a normal job. So they're getting off and then I'm going to be recording with them And actually, when does this go live? I guess it's not that much of a spoiler because the Kickstarter is up. My friend Sandeep Rai, who has been on the show several times, a buddy of mine, he's over in the UK and he wrote the Vita books that were Kickstarted a long time ago, like the first year, the second year, the third year and beyond. He wrote a book about PS3, which I wrote a few pieces in. And then he approached. So this is actually pretty interesting and we'll talk about it on the show, but I had come up with this idea of trying to reacquire Podcast Beyond. And I've talked to the audience about this, where I approached IGN several times to buy Podcast Beyond. And I want it specifically to make a retro PlayStation podcast with it. And then I was thinking, I was like, well, what if like if there's a place for like old retro magazines that cover things that are static. So like things that are over and you can kind of just delve in and do it. And then Sandy messaged me a few days later and he's like, I'm kind of inspired by your idea. You mind if I run with this? And I'm like, by all means, my friend. So he's doing a retro PlayStation magazine and he's going to come on the show to talk about it. So I'm really excited about it.
A print magazine?
Nice.
Yeah, print magazine. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Inspired by yours truly.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about would I acquire a piece of this? And we're going to do something, but I was telling him like, it's buying Lilymo, 49% of Lilymo has complicated my life insanely. And part of it is that it's a Canadian company. So I'm getting things from them. I'm like, I don't know, man. We get things from our lawyers and they're like, you'd have to just sign this. I'm like, all right, fine. I could be literally signing anything for all I know. These people could be literally sending me anything at all. And he's in the Britain. So I'm like, I can't have another international tendril. But maybe we'll figure out a marketing thing or something on the back end. But in the meantime, I just want to see his thing get kickstarted. It's such a nice idea. So anyway, that was a whole apropos about nothing. But that's why I'm going to be working on Monday. The work never stops. The buck must stop somewhere. Dustin's not stopping the buck. So I'm gonna have to stop it.
You could see Gran Turismo a different day.
We were talking about seeing it on Saturday, but the thing is that we're recording on Tuesday, I believe, or Wednesday, one of those days.
Yeah, I think it's
Tuesday. And I can't see something on Saturday and talk about it on Tuesday. I'm going to be 2 sheets to the wind 7,000 times between now and between those two things, you know, and forget everything. That's why I have to replay Alan Wake this weekend.
Yeah.
But I don't have to. I'm playing it because I want to play it on nightmare mode so I get the platinum trophy. Let's be honest.
Right.
You don't have to, but you have to.
Yeah, but anyway, I'm doing it. All right. My friends, actually, I had an idea. Hold on a sec.
Uh-oh.
You know what I'm noticing while he's away? We got the Pennsylvania posse in the house here.
That's right, dude.
If this is a Civil War, Colin would be in deep shit right now.
Yeah,
why is that?
For a lot of reasons.
We got the Pennsylvania posse in the house.
Oh,
wait. I mean, yeah, you're in the South.
Yeah, but remember, Virginia split in half during the Civil War because half of them didn't want to be the racists.
Yeah, but where was Richmond?
but Richmond was in the real Virginia, that was the racist Virginia.
We won't mention that part.
Well, we did do things a little bit differently down here in Virginia. There was a time down here. It's a little bit different. All right. I didn't know. Usually when I know everyone's topics, we email the week of our shows. Dagan emails me, then I forward it to everyone else. Usually say I don't have a topic yet, and then I respond to it later. Usually things present themselves to me in an order where I'm like, okay, I think this is kind of a good place to start. This would be a good place. And like when we had Dustin on last time, he had arcade. And I thought that was a great place to end because that's like kind of a captive audience thing, right? But nothing really presented itself to me in any cogent way this week for the 4 topics. Thus, I grabbed the 4-sided die that I used to play D&D with in middle school.
Nice.
I'll be number 1. Dagan, you'll be number 2. 2. Dustin, you'll be number 3. Ben, you'll be number 4. And in the name of Baldur's Gate, Dustin's new favorite game,
right?
We'll roll to see
in the name of Shadowheart, my girl.
Shadowheart. This is for Shadowheart.
Yes.
Oh, 1. Me. All right.
Okay.
My friends, I instructed you guys to get a whiteboard if you had one, but you could just use paper if you want. I'm really excited about this. I have a new quiz for you. And this quiz, I think, will be very interesting indeed.
Oh, I'm scared.
A couple weeks ago, we were talking about immigration on the show, legal immigration primarily, but talking about immigration. And something came up on that I thought I wanted to pursue a little bit more closely. The test you have to take when you become a citizen.
No.
Now, I went online and I found, so here's the detail. When you become a citizen in the United States, you have to do all these kinds of things, right? And one of them is you have to take a civics test. And there are 100 possible questions they can ask you, but they'll ask you any 10. And so I have a list of all 100 questions that they could possibly ask you because you can study them or whatever. And I'm just letting you know they're comically easy. You need to get 6 out of 10, I believe. Let me verify this. I think it's 6 out of 10 to pass. Yeah, 6 out of 10. So I wanted to see, would we be able to become, I know I can answer them. Come on. Would you guys become citizens? Ben, I'm pretty sure Ben will become a citizen. Dustin, who knows where if Dustin's going to become. We're going to have to deport Dustin. Dagan.
I'm already going to Japan.
Dagan's already on this slow boat to China right now. He's
Could
out.
I get deported? Could this be a possible outcome?
No, we have birthright citizenship here. You guys are perfectly safe.
All right.
Should we have that? Absolutely not. But we have it nonetheless. All right. So here's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go around the horn. I asked everyone to get something they can write on, right? And I'm going to go, and we'll start with Ben. And I'm really just using the order that you're on my screen, which is the same order. I went descending order with the dice. I'm now going to go ascending order. So Ben, you're going to go first, then Dustin, then Dagan, and so on and so forth. You'll each pick one number. Oh, there you got the marker. Very nice. Expo. I love Expo markers. They don't smell good enough.
They're the
I
best.
like
I agree with that.
I love the old 80s and early 90s dry erase markers that would just destroy your life.
Yeah. Cancer with every whiff.
Yeah,
right. Like
seriously.
our mom used to work at an airline, and she was an instructor for flight attendants. So she had like a classroom and stuff, and I used to go see her, and she had those markers. That was my first exposure to whiteboards, and I probably was getting a little crazy with those markers when I was in second or third grade. With them. Yeah.
So my wife homeschools our kids, and this whiteboard and marker that I'm using is from their homeschool supplies. So I don't really know what they're learning about today, or if they even need this. But if they need it, they don't have it. So
yeah, that's fine.
My children will probably
kids.
not be able to pass a test because I am taking a test.
What did they used to call those, Ben? The little chalkboards. There's a name for them, right? And they used to give them the kids in like the 1800 slates, right?
Slates.
And it's kind of weird to me that we stopped doing that in some sense. Like, wouldn't that have been much more judicious in just giving us tons of dittos? I'm going through my stuff. I was born in 84, so I was in elementary school by 89, I guess. And then I'm going through my stuff that my parents have kept, and it's just a million papers.
Yep.
Like, they used to just send you home with papers being like, remember, we're off on Friday. And that would be a piece of paper.
Right.
And then you would do all of your dittos, and that would all be piece of paper. It's like, just give me a goddamn chalkboard.
Yeah, but if you had a chalkboard and you wrote "We're off on Friday" and you took it home to your parents,
That's true. That's
like
different.
it erased in your bag or something.
Yeah, I'm talking about two different things, I guess, here in a sense. All right, so what I want to do is I want to go around the horn. There are 100 questions, and so each of you will be able to pick a random number between 1 and 100. I'll go to that, and I will ask the question. You will write down your answer, and then we will see what happens if you would become a citizen of these United States.
Oh, right.
So, Ben, pick a number between 1 and 100.
900. Oh, sorry. Just kidding. 90.
90. All right. 90. Here it is. What ocean is on the east coast of the United States? What ocean?
Am I supposed to write it? I'm supposed to write it down?
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
Just Ben.
No, all of you. No, all of you write it. Sorry. I wanted to be clear. All of you write them. And you'll go around picking different questions.
Right.
So, what ocean is on the east coast of the United States? Literally the easiest question ever asked of a person before. Ben, what did you answer?
I answered with Atlantic.
Atlantic. Very, very well done. Dustin.
Atlantic.
Atlantic. Dagan.
Hotlantic.
Very, all right, perfect. Hotland. Well, global warming, I guess you're probably right. All right, so everyone scored on the first one. I should write this down. Yeah.
So I learned an easy way when I was in second grade or something to know that. And I might get the details wrong here, but use my mnemonic to figure it out. For people who have a hard time with it. I don't always know what the Atlantic is, but I know that the Pacific, like when they were journeying west to go to get peace, I don't know. And Pacific means something about peace. I don't remember exactly, but like the peace. I don't think it was very peaceful on the trail over there, but that's just how I've always remembered it until I became an adult. And
I have so many weird, I'm laughing at you, but I have so many weird things just like that.
It doesn't matter if it's weird or not. It matters if it works.
Yeah, if it works.
Here's how I remember the oceans, is that there's fucking 4 of them.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess there is a 5th now. They say the Southern Ocean is the thing now, but not when I was a kid. The Southern Ocean wasn't a thing when I was a kid. It's like the easiest thing you could have told me is like, name the oceans. It's like, there's 4 of them.
Right.
You kidding? So I didn't need a mnemonic. All right. You guys all got that one right. Congratulations. You're well on your way to becoming citizens of the United States. Dustin, Pick a number between 1 and 100.
69.
Whoa. I wonder
Just
what
get
the
out of the
69th
way.
question is. Yeah, sure. Who is considered the father of our country? Who is considered the father of our country? That guy knows. That was coming by on that motorcycle. He definitely knows.
He's channeling that energy.
All right, Dustin, what'd you answer?
I'm thinking about this because it seems a little vague to me.
I'm already worried about you. We might be sending you out.
Okay, I ran out of space, but I'll say
Okay.
George Washington.
Yeah, absolutely. Dagan.
Yes, I said
Oh, yeah.
Georgia Wash.
Georgia Wash.
Georgia Wash.
And
wrote
there, Georgie
Georgie
boy.
boy.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. We all accept that. Georgia Wash is a reference to a man that used to work at Wallbaum's, a supermarket with Dagan. He was an old Italian man, and he wouldn't say George Washington. There was a reference to the bridge, I guess.
I don't even know why. Oh, no, he was talking about money. It was always money with him. Escarole.
Escarole, right?
Escarole. That was Alphonse.
Yeah. And he would say Georgia Wash.
Georgia Wash. That was a one. That was a single. Georgia Wash.
He couldn't just say one. He'd say Georgia Wash. All right. We're well on our way to citizenship here. Dustin, you got me a little nervous. Who else could it have been?
Well, I was thinking, like, should it be the person who wrote the Constitution? Should it be who found the land? But then I was like, no, the land doesn't make sense because they found the land, not the country. So
Who would be number 2? Ben Franklin?
The father of our country? Yeah, I guess it would be something like, Ben Franklin maybe, but I would say, maybe even James Madison because he wrote the Constitution.
right, that's what I was thinking. Like, is
John
he
Adams
considered part of the
potential.
father?
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Adam-
we have many fathers.
Adams. Oh, of course, the Declaration. So you would have Adams, Jefferson, Franklin. Yeah, so it's like that group of 5, I would say.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
The founding fathers,
Yeah.
as it were.
Right. That's perfect. How did you come up with that?
I did teach history for a college level at one point. So,
Oh,
You should be. I'm confident in your skills here. Then, Dagan, pick a number between 1 and 100.
Okay, I'm going to go with 13 in honor of Graydon, my son turning 13 today. We got 2 teenagers in the house now.
woo.
I thought you were going to say 13 because of the 13 colonies, but I like the connection there as well. I thought you were showing a little bit of patriotism.
That's also
and happy
important.
birthday to that young man.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Name one branch or part of the government.
Okay.
Name one branch or part of the government.
Do I have to spell it correctly?
No, I don't think you said Georgie boy before when we gave you that right. Sorry, I'm gonna let spelling errors go. Dag, hit me with an answer here.
Okay.
Name one branch or part of
I
government.
said, can you see that?
Yep, judicial. Yep. Right. You are Ben.
Executive.
Yeah, that's right. Dustin.
Executive. I don't think I spelled it right.
I'm
gonna hide it.
No, go put it back. I want to see it again.
I was trying to do it quick
It's
because you
legit.
started.
Okay,
got
yeah,
it.
you spelled it right.
The V is
The
Yeah,
V
okay,
is,
good.
the V is hidden.
You know,
The V is
here.
hidden, but it's
Yeah.
there. All right, well done.
Okay.
3 for 3.
Not bad.
You guys are doing great.
We're going places.
Ben, pick a number between 1 and 100.
24.
Who does a U.S. senator represent? Who does a U.S. senator represent?
Now or originally?
Now. Yeah,
Okay.
now. Yeah. Good question, though. Who does a U.S. senator represent? Ben, what do you say?
I said state.
Yeah, I'm going to allow that. It says
Yeah.
people of the state, but the state.
Yeah.
As opposed to the legislature, which is what it was originally.
Right.
Dustin, what did you say?
I said state.
Yeah, right. That's right. Dagan?
Good number, Ben, by the way. I like the 24 bit.
Mm.
Well done.
I could see on the horizon, here comes the Statue of Liberty. I could see it coming in to the harbor. I'm gonna be arriving in the promised land soon.
You're close. In the
Well,
distance,
they will
the Georgia
spell
Wash
your
Bridge.
last name wrong and separate you from your family.
All right. Dustin, pick a number between 1 and 100.
Let's do 30 since I'm
30.
turning 30 soon.
Ooh. If the president can no longer serve, who becomes president? If the president can no longer serve, who becomes president? Dustin, what do you say?
The vice president.
That's right. Dagan?
Same thing, vice
Yeah, vice
pres.
president. God forbid in this situation, Ben. VP? Very well done.
How do we know that Ben meant vice president by VP? It could have been
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Viper prostate or something.
Yeah, Viper prostate.
That's weird.
Who
That's
knows?
actually exactly what I meant when I wrote it.
Dagan, pick a number between 1 and 100.
Oh, let's see. I'll go 99.
99. When do we celebrate Independence Day?
Okay.
When do we celebrate Independence Day? What do you say?
Said July 4th.
That's right. That's right. Ben.
July 4th, but I wrote down as a bonus.
What do you got?
It could have been July 2nd.
It could have been July 2nd. That's true. In fact, didn't John Adams write that July 2nd in his famous quote was but it was about July 2nd would be remembered as this thing. Dustin.
July 4th.
That's right. Well done.
Yeah,
Now, at this point, you guys would all become citizens. So I don't know if we just stop the quiz here. It's a little infantilizing, isn't it, in some sense?
I kind of want to miss one. I kind of
Okay.
want to.
No, let's keep going.
Is there any
Yeah.
particularly hard ones, Colin? Maybe since you've read through the list,
Yeah, let me see.
that might be. If someone gets fucked with the 6 hardest questions that Americans don't even know.
Well,
Okay, hold on.
he's looking. I think I told this on the episode about immigration or the topic about immigration, but my brother-in-law's wife just became a citizen. And she said that, I think she got all 10 of hers right, but she said that it was the easiest thing she's ever done in her life. And she knew all of the stuff before she ever studied, which maybe she's more studied than the average immigrant, I suppose. But I don't know. These seem pretty easy. If you've studied it all.
I have one for you.
Let's do it.
So there's a few harder ones, I guess. Name one U.S. territory. Name one U.S. territory.
Okay.
Part of the United States that has not been given statehood. Haven't had a state in a long time now. Back in the heyday, we'd have a state. We did things a little bit differently in the early American Republic. All right. Ben, what do you say?
Said Guam.
Yes. Dustin.
Puerto Rico.
I knew it was coming.
Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico. One of my favorite Trump quotes ever. Was that Puerto Rican?
I think so. Is it?
Oh, I don't think so.
Don't
No,
quote me. I don't
man.
know.
Oh, the Hispanics are going to be after me. Dagan, what do you say for
Hey, Macarena.
Yep, that's right. They have the answers they have here. There are 5 major territories: Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, American Samoa, Northern Mariana Islands, and Guam. So there you go. Constellation is sponsored by DraftKings, where you can bet some cash and hopefully win even more by betting on our beloved American sport of football. Get the app now and use the code Constellation when you sign up. Okay, so let me just say that I'm busting at the seams right now because the NFL season is back. And I friggin' love the NFL, as many listeners, especially you longtimers, know well. Indeed, I always say that football season changes my life, lifts my spirits, and gives me something to look forward to, even if I'm a diehard Jets fan that never misses a game. Hopefully this year will be better under the tutelage of Mr. Rogers, but I digress. My friends, using the DraftKings app, you'll be able to place bets on games using an official sports betting partner of the NFL. And better yet, you're going to get a pretty damn nice deal when you sign up on the DraftKings app using the code Constellation. When you do, you'll get $200 in bonus bets instantly. All you have to do is put $5 of your own down. No tricks, it's really that simple. You bet $5 and you'll get $200 more to have some fun with, and perhaps turn into a little profit for your wallet or bank account. Better yet, old and new DraftKings customers alike will get 2 new offers every single game day in September, which of course means Sundays, yes, but Mondays and Thursdays too. So dive into the app and see what it might do for you. Download DraftKings now and use the code Constellation to sign up. New customers can take home $200 in bonus bets instantly just for betting $5. That's code Constellation. CONSTELLATION, only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. That's 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling at 888-789-7777 or by visiting ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort of Kansas, 21 plus age varied by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. See dkng.com/football for eligibility, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. Constellation is sponsored by Mint Mobile and their affordable phone plans for talk, text, and data. Learn more by visiting mintmobile.com/con. Have you ever stopped to ask yourself why you're paying so much for your mobile bill? After all, if you're with one of the big wireless companies we all know about, chances are you're paying more than you have to for what you get. And in many cases, you're paying way more. But Mint Mobile wants to help ameliorate that overpayment by providing you with high-quality service at only a fraction of the cost. So here's the rub. For a mere $15 a month, you heard that right, $15, Mint Mobile will hook you up with unlimited talk, unlimited text, and unlimited data using the nation's biggest 5G network. No overages, no surprise fees, just high-quality service so you can talk, chat, and peruse the net for a frankly tiny amount of money. How does Mint Mobile do it? Well, it's not exactly mysterious. They don't have brick-and-mortar stores sucking up all of their revenue, and they realize that for most of us, it's the shortness and the sweetness of their plan that really matters. Friends, I'm probably like you. I'm paying way too much for my mobile plan with a company I've been doing business with for like 22 years. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But Mint Mobile really truly does make sense. Save some of that hard-earned money of yours for something else, a video game perhaps, or a meal out on the town. God forbid you even save it for a rainy day. Mint Mobile gives you options, but one thing you'll love more than anything, saying goodbye to big wireless's jaw-dropping monthly bills. $15 a month won't drop your jaw. Maybe your blood pressure though, but that's typically a good thing. See your doctor. To get your new unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month and get that plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/con. That's mintmobile.com/con. To cut your wireless bill to just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/con.
Very
all
nice.
right, so you guys would all pass that as well. I have another one for you.
Let's do it.
Name one Native American tribe in the United States.
Oh.
Name one Native American tribe. There are 574 federally recognized tribes.
I will not be embarrassed of my ignorance.
I'm
Think I got
blanking
this.
right now.
Oh man, some of these questions could really be misinterpreted, huh? What major event happened on September 11th, 2001 in the U.S.?
Oh, wow.
You're going to get some conspiracy theory stuff. What did Martin Luther King Jr. do? Well, that's going to be interesting one. But let's stick here. Name one Native American tribe. Dave, what do you say?
I said Cherokee.
Yeah, that's right. That's one of them.
Cherokee
It's at the very
Nation.
top of the list. It's actually at the very top of the list. Dustin.
Dustin looks very
I'm risking so
upset.
hard because I was like, this sounds right, but if it's wrong, it'll be very embarrassing. Samoa. And that's the cookie, the Girl Scout cookie that they have connection to the tribes.
But isn't it Samoan, the Pacific Islanders?
I think that's Pacific
but are they
Islanders.
Don't they have a...
Like Hawaiian.
Hawaii?
Oh, that's Hawaiian, so that
it's
doesn't
not
count.
It's not in this list, but it's not an all-inclusive list. I want to give you what
Cherokee was what I should have picked. Dan.
What
That's not
are the
bad.
574 federally recognized tribes? There we go.
I would say that Samoa is South Pacific, and Native Americans are typically only from the upper, the
Are
northern.
there
48. Girl
Scout cookies that are named after a tribe though?
I have no idea.
Thin
Maybe
Mints.
I'm just pulling that Thin Mints. Yes.
Samoa is not in the list of 500.
Dang it! I'm not.
Somehow you didn't answer that question right. So Dustin,
I'm losing
You
my
got an X.
citizenship.
well, no, you're good. I mean,
No,
you're
you're
good.
still
So-
in.
I think
You're
that-
still in.
Yeah, but the how wrong that question, my answer was. I think.
I mean, it's incredible how many you could have picked that weren't Samoa. But
I'm
that
also
would've-
pretty
yeah.
sure that the test is multiple choice.
Oh.
Oh,
At least,
Yeah, it's not giving me
That's
the
what I
choices
understood.
here. I mean, it gives me the choices of what are the options, but for instance, one ocean is on the west coast of the U.S. It just says the answer. It doesn't tell me what the choices
Right.
would be.
Oh, okay.
so I
I
don't
won't
think
infantilize you
Thin Mint
further
would have
by-
been on there. I don't think Thin Mint would have been on there, but Samoa
No.
might have been.
Ben, what did you say?
I said to honor my heritage, Cherokee.
Cherokee. Very cool.
Oh, interesting.
Also,
The
it's
answers
easiest
that
one
they,
to remember.
the answers that they give are Cherokee, Navajo, Sioux, Chippewa, Choctaw, Pueblo, Apache, Iroquois, which is what I would have said, Creek, Blackfeet, Seminole, Cheyenne, Arawak, Shawnee, Mohegan, Huron, Oneida, Lakota, Crow, Teton, Hopi, and Inuit.
Oh. There's some smaller ones that aren't on there.
Oh, well, yeah.
There's
Like there
500
are
of them, yeah.
574 possible answers. They
Oh,
say.
that's the total. Oh, that's the total. Oh, okay. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, I pulled up a list and there are a lot of obscure ones. It's every tribe that the United States acknowledges after we wrote a bunch of treaties with them and then never
honored any of it.
And honored a single thing that we ever said. All right, let's continue to move on. Listen, we conquered this land, and that's the way it goes with history. But we really did it in a very shady way. In some sense, it's good that we kind of did it the way we did, as opposed to just the total war that would have happened in previous, generations and eons of human history. But it's kind of like the shadiest way is to say, like, no, we're good, we're friends.
Yeah,
just go over there, and so on and so forth. Oklahoma was supposed to be Indian. Well, it's called Indian territory. All right, let's see here. Okay. Name one war fought by the U.S. in the 1800s. There's only 4 answers. Name one war fought by the U.S. in the 1800s. Ben, let's start with you.
I said Civil War.
Yes, of course.
Like the
big one. Yeah, that's the easiest one. Dustin.
Civil War.
Civil War, that's right. Dagan.
I'm going to just rub this in for you.
Civil War.
Okay, wait. We could spice up the question and say, name one war that isn't one of the other 3.
All right, yeah. So, yeah, all right. So
because I lose a point then.
Oh, 9.5, yeah. There's 3 other answers.
Let me
One
think.
of them has the date in it that indicates to you that it's in the 1800s.
That was because that's 1812?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, the War of 1812.
And then the French Indian War would have been before 1800s.
That's 1750s into the 1760s.
I was going to say,
that would
okay.
have been my answer, actually. I didn't know that.
The French and Indian War is like the little domino of the American Revolution.
Right.
Yeah.
Because George Washington fought in that, actually out at Fort Pitt. George Washington made his name out in Western Pennsylvania. Fucking the Indians up.
Yo. Damn.
And the French. See, a lot of people think that the war is called the French and Indian War because it was the French versus the Indian, but we called it the French and Indian War because it was the French and the Indians versus
Right.
us.
Right.
And that was one piece of the 7 Years' War, right? I think that's right. In Europe, like there was a war going on in Europe, and that was like some sort of like frontier battle was the French and Indian War. And yes, we won that too. Goodbye, France from the continent, except for in Quebec. All right. The other choices would be Mexican-American War, of course, which is where we took Mexico and California and pieces of the Southwest, and then the Spanish-American War, which is 1898, and that's when we fought the Spanish in the Caribbean, primarily. So, okay.
Wow. Almost
Let's do one
1900s.
more.
All right.
Let me go. Oh, this is a tough one. See, if I was I'd be like, you giving me this fucking question? You asked me what the ocean on the East Coast is, and then you give me this? Name one of the writers of the Federalist Papers.
Oh.
The most important documents to the judicial branch of the United States, outside of the Constitution, of course, cited in every single Supreme Court case, pretty much.
Yep.
As
oh my gosh, I don't even.
There's 3 names plus their pen name if you wanted to use their pen name. No one, by the way, little history about the Federalist Papers. So the Federalist Papers, for people that don't know, when the Constitution was being written in the late 1780s, there were these anonymous letters appearing in newspapers that would be like, this is why you want to support the Constitution. These are the arguments for it. And what came out later, actually after a couple of them died, I think, was that 3 men were responsible for writing them under a pen name Publius. Or Publius.
You just stole my thunder.
Oh, are you going to use that?
Yeah.
All right. Well, go ahead.
I wrote Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say it, but I can write it.
Pubulus?
Pubulus.
Pubics.
Yeah.
Yep. Hamilton, Alexander Hamilton, one of them. Dustin, do you have any answers?
This is Hamilton, how can you write like you're running out of time? They're talking about him writing the Federalist Papers.
So
I learned something.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Dig, do you have an answer?
I wish I had something like that. No, I didn't know this, so I made a paper airplane, reverted back like I used to do when I took tests in high school, and I wrote Dr. Seuss.
Okay, fair enough. X.
Have you seen Hamilton, Dagan?
You know what? I think I'm the last person in the world to have not seen Hamilton.
I, for the most part, dislike musicals by and large. Love Hamilton, though. I think it's great.
I love George III in Hamilton.
Yeah.
His songs are awesome. And he's like effeminate and it's very, very funny. He's very, very great. Yeah.
The guy from
Hamilton,
Mindhunter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Hamilton is not only like a good, just recreational thing, but it's obviously modernized to some extent, but it's pretty like full of historical information. And I think I'm trying to remember the name of the website. There's a website that goes through like every lyric, because pretty much the entire thing is sung. There's no real spoken parts, but pretty much goes through every lyric and like breaks down everything. I actually used it as a illustration right when it, like, probably the year it came out. But it's good. You should check it out, even if just for the entertainment value. It's good, but also for the historical context.
Yeah, see, I would have got that right. My daughter, I think she had the entire thing memorized. I said, if you ever do a knockback with me, we have to do Hamilton. Like, it's got to be either Harry Potter or Hamilton. Because
You'll Be Back is my favorite song in that. I love that song.
Yeah.
Okay, the other two answers, by the way, would be James Madison, of course, a little shady since he was writing the document, as it were, and John Jay, who ended up being the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And
they named him after the College of Criminal Justice.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, they had a college in New York called John Jay, and then someone was inspired by that and named him John Jay.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, you guys would become citizens. Ben, perfect score. I told you at the top you would be fine. You guys just squeezed in. Not really. 9 out of 10. Pretty well done.
10. Come on.
Now let me ask you this as we part. I thought that was pretty fun, but let me ask you about this. It seems a little infantilizing to ask people these questions. These are, if you don't know the answers to these questions, man, how is that possible that you wouldn't know the answers to some of these questions? I feel like you got to get a level deeper with the questions. Name all 3 branches. You know, that kind of shit, as opposed to one.
I don't know, though. Is it just our perspective? Let's say I was taking a citizenship test to, I don't know, name a place, Australia. I don't know anything about the history of that place. You know?
Yeah.
So,
mate.
Yeah, I mean, we've grown up with these facts. Like, even just through pop culture, we've absorbed a lot of these facts, right?
Yeah.
Whether you've studied them or not. You probably learned them in school in, your early years, and then, you've forgotten them, but absorbed them through pop culture. But you're right. If I were to go to a completely new country and they were like, you have 3 years to learn this. Here's the entire history of this country. Name one random guy or one random white dude you've never heard of before studying. And by the way, a lot of them have the same name. It could be, I could understand how that would be difficult.
Yeah, for sure.
We are America, which means we're the best. So you should know all of our history.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. This is like probably for domestic, naturally born Americans. This is probably like at an 8-year-old's level.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like, let's give the adult human a 8-year-old's test. I just feel like there's got to be a better way. Like, let's not even bother. If that's what you got to do, don't even bother.
Right.
Just fucking forego that entire thing. All right. That was fun. Let's move on, my friends. I have the dice again. Again, the 4-sided die I used to play D&D with. Back in those heady middle school years. All right. I'm going to roll. I came up 1 again. Feels weighted. 2, Dagan.
Okay.
You're up, my friend. Hit us with your topic.
Well, we talked about this in the past couple. What did you primarily play as in D&D? Were you a dark elf? Were you a wizard?
No, I like playing actually as a thief. Or like a rogue.
Nice.
Because,
that sounds fun.
Yeah, I just felt like D&D really invoked in me. It's something that I still love in video games when you can do it. It's rare, and I love killing shit in games, but I love non-violent play. Or play where you can, like the kind of, I guess it would be kind of chaotic neutral or whatever, where you're really just you're going into the pub, so you're trying to steal from a dude, and you're trying to like eavesdrop on someone, and you're trying to do all these things that could get you into combat, but that wasn't necessarily based on dice rolls of the things that you were supposed to be good at. So
I like that.
I liked playing like that. That really opened my mind to role play. But to the idea that it's not all combat. The combat's fun, casting your fireball spells and upgrading your weapons and but I love the earning experience for doing things. And that really, I don't know, it was very different because we were just like playing Final Fantasy IV and Dragon Quest at the time and all of that. And so yeah, but in video games, I'm the white male fighter with a sword and a shield like every time.
The barbarian. Yeah,
which was a meme recently with Baldur's Gate, I think. But that is really just what I do. Yeah. I don't want to play as a mage. I had this fantasy of playing Final Fantasy XIV as a healer because I think that would be really interesting, but I don't have the patience to do that. That's the kind of shit. I'm sorry, Ben, what were you going to say?
No, it's all right. With Baldur's Gate, I saw that meme and I decided I was going to shake it up. So I was a a white human fighter female, not a male. You know, I had to shake it up a little bit, get a little bit of variety in my life.
Little lady role play.
Little lady
for
role
men.
play.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah.
Right on. All right.
Is that always a Valkyrie, or can it be something besides a? We grew up with Valkyrie in the 80s, right? Any kind of war, a chick with a sword, that's a Valkyrie.
Yeah.
Right, that's it. Blanket.
Valkyries are primarily, these days, it's like, I think of God of War and Valkyrie Lenneth and stuff like that, or whatever, that Square Enix series, Valkyrie Profile. What was the new one? Valkyrie Elysium.
Yes.
But no, there's all sorts. And then I see you could play as like cat people and lizard people and shit. I'm like, come on, man. What the fuck do you want from me? I don't know what the hell to do with this. This is too weird for me. But I know who that's for. That's not for me. We all know who that stuff's for. Yeah. And I'll leave it there. Dig.
All right, we digress. So my topic, how do I describe this one today for you guys? I emailed about it, but so basically think back present day or more contemporary, or think back to when you were younger, right? Just something in the zeitgeist. I was saying in the email, it could be a movie, a TV show, a pop culture franchise, a band, maybe even a specific genre of music, you know, a toy that you grew up that was really popular, but something that you just felt like you couldn't get. You know, the Kool-Aid was in the offing, but you weren't drinking it. You know, something that that was really popular, but that you just didn't go in for, or you tried and maybe kind of was like, I don't understand what all the hype's about, that type of thing. And you know what brought it up for me? I think recently, like last week, I saw that Hulk Hogan was on Rogan. Was on the Joe Rogan podcast. And I was really fascinated with the conversation because I feel like, well, Hulk Hogan was like a pop culture icon when I was growing up in the 80s. And then I felt like Rogan and Hogan had all these things in common. So I thought it would be an interesting conversation. And it was. And Hogan was really kind of candid about his history and, you know, when he was at the top of his game, popularity wise, and he was like a household name. But it got me to thinking, I was channeling like 5th grade, 6th grade Dagan. So like 83, 84, and how big pro wrestling, specifically WWF was. It was just huge. I mean, it was everywhere. I remember being in my 6th grade classroom, and I just feel like at that time, every one of my contemporaries, mostly boys at that time, they were talking about the pay-per-view events. They were rocking the Hulk Hogan, you know, t-shirts. They had the wrestling magazines. Like they were all in. It was all wrestling on the playground, who was going off the top rope with the playground equipment and killing somebody. And they're at the nurse's office. Like wrestling was a huge thing. And I just never really got it. Now I think back to like 84, right? When it was at the height of its popularity. Everybody was rocking the t-shirts. There was the toys. Everybody was walking around with their Hulkamaniac, you know, headbands, lunch boxes. I think, what was it? That Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling cartoon was on, right? That Deke cartoon. It was huge. It was just everywhere. And it was colorful and fun and everything, but I never really got it. I was always like, I don't really see the fascination. I also wasn't the type really to like horseplay and wrestle with my friends and stuff like that. I just wasn't that type of dude. Like I would rather just go play with the action figures and let's do combat that way. Like I don't want to get hurt. I think that was a big part of it too. Like I wasn't big. I was kind of a scrawny little dude. So I was just, and you know what happened with that too? As we got older and we went from little nerds to becoming big nerds, right? Wrestling and a fascination with wrestling. And maybe this ties into the inception of all the wrestling video games, which kind of became a thing, I feel like, in the N64 era specifically, but maybe a little earlier, where it seemed like everybody with nerdy interests, if you were into Star Trek, if you were into sci-fi, Star Wars, if you were into video games, that also tied in with a fascination oftentimes of wrestling. So that same fan base for all those things were also fans of wrestling. And I was just like, wow, I still don't get it, although it seems to captivate somebody with my tastes, or at least my proclivity for nerdy shit. But I just wasn't of that. Even my best friend, Even my best friend PJ was super into wrestling, and he would tune into the pay-per-view events. He was, I guess, as he discovered skateboarding and got a little older, he got a little more and more out of it. But he was definitely in for a period of time, hook, line, and sinker. So this got me to thinking, why did I never really get this? And there were other things that I never really got that became popular, but that was always the biggie for me. That one thing that always eluded me. So I just wanted to toss it over to you guys and see, do you have that one thing, or do you have it now, or did you have it when you were a kid where you're just like, I don't understand the fascination with this thing? So Ben, I'm looking at you. I'll throw it over to you, my friend. Do you have that one thing like my WWF thing where you just weren't partaking in the Kool-Aid?
It's funny because that was one of the things I thought about was wrestling. And for me, I was always surrounded by it. I don't know if it was continual or if there was like a resurgence by the time I was in about, 6th grade or so, probably 96, somewhere in there, 95, 96. And, that was the time of Stone Cold and The Rock and Sting and like all those guys who were in that period of time. And everybody else in my class wore like wrestling shirts and talked about it. And I would absorb all of that through them. And we didn't, we didn't have cable, or I don't even know if we had the whatever station the wrestling was on. And I always wanted to watch wrestling just so I could be a part of the conversation. But then I never could. And so when it got to the point where I finally could watch wrestling, all those people who were like in the zeitgeist were kind of already moving on. And then also I just felt like I've missed all the storylines. Now I know somebody's going to write it and be like, you don't have to know this. I get it. I don't care. That's fine. Whatever. I'm just saying that like by the time I finally did try to get into it, I was like, I'm lost. And so I never really got to participate. But that's not something that I didn't get. That's something that I wasn't able to participate in. But as far as something I didn't get, I thought I'd pick this one specifically because of the lineup of the show today. And that's anime/animated shows. Now, I love great animation. I think that some of my favorite movies ever are animated. So it's not that I don't like animation. It's just that I've never been able to get into, like, you could tell me the premise for a show. It could be right up my alley. I could love every piece of it. But for some reason, if I know that it's animated, I'm like, yeah, I'll watch it, but I don't know if I'm going to be happy about it. And I would, in my head, conceptually, I would rather watch a really good show. But when it comes down to it, if you give me the choice between this animated series and that's really good, and this, I don't know what the right word is, not non-animated?
Yeah, live action.
Live action, there you go. This live action show that's pretty mid, I'm probably going to pick the mid one, because for some reason my brain just doesn't connect to watch something animated. And I know, like, I've never been somebody like, if something's animated, to call it a cartoon. I know that's not what they are. I very much like many of the animated things I've seen, I very much enjoy. There's a lot of Star Wars animated stuff, series that have been great. Even anime, since I mentioned that. When I can get into a series of anime, I really enjoy it. I like many anime films, and some of them are like, master classes. But for whatever reason, I don't know. It's more popular now than it feels like it's ever been. When I was a kid, that was definitely not the case for a long time. But I don't know. I've never been able to connect why I don't enjoy them with the fact that I don't enjoy. Like, I've never been able to figure it out, but I just can't get into it, even if I want to. For instance, I've been trying to watch Attack on Titan for years now. And I mean, I've watched a lot of it, and I've watched a lot of it twice, and I really like it. But if you tell me, like, let's sit down and watch Attack on Titan, I'm like, it's anime. Like, I don't know. It just doesn't feel, it feels like I'm wasting my time, even though it's better than what else I could be doing. It's better than what else I could be watching. So that's kind of my perspective on the thing I don't get. Even though I get it, I don't get it.
I love that. I mean, what's funny about that, Ben? As you talk about that, I realize I have the same thing, but for a different reason. With me, I'm less likely to go into something animated, less so the feature, but something that's going to be time consuming, like a series, whether it's anime or an adult animated series, a direct to Netflix type thing, because I know I'm going to be hypercritical of it.
Well, yeah.
Right.
You have a different perspective for sure. Yeah.
So that's, I'm less likely to give something animated a chance, although I do. Oftentimes, I'd rather engage in the live action thing because I know there's not going to be that barrier where I just can't enjoy something live action. It's more foreign to me and I can just enjoy it more. It's kind of weird. So I have the high standard going, and kind of that chip on my shoulder almost going in where it's like, it's got to be good. I would say if something as good as Attack on Titan hasn't really engaged you or changed that in you, then that's really saying something about just your taste in what.
Well, it has engaged me. I like it. Like I'm very much into it.
Yeah.
But when it comes time to actually, do you want to watch this? I'm like, meh.
That's interesting. That's really, I bet that's a common thing with people.
And I mean, I've watched through all of several series, anime series, specifically talking anime, many animated series, especially over the course of my life. But, many of the higher tiered, higher rated anime series, I've watched through them and I've enjoyed them. And I thought that was really good. But then next time you ask me, it's not that I don't like them when I watch them. Sometimes I don't like them when I watch them. But it's not that I don't like them when I watch them. It's that when I think about watching them, I'm uninterested.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's such a huge, I mean, it doesn't have to be One Piece also for a lot of these things to be huge time investments,
but that's not a problem that's not my barrier. Because if you told me there was a 10 episode live action show or a 10 season live action show, and they were all an hour long, I got 240 hours in front of me. I'm like, let's start today.
Yeah, you'd be more inclined to watch that.
So it's not that. It's not the time investment.
That's interesting.
I mean, with One Piece, it's the time investment. But
oh my gosh, it's intimidating, downright intimidating.
Yeah.
What do you think, Dust? Where are you going with this?
I have to comment slightly on the anime thing, just a non sequitur. I think you guys will think it's funny.
Yeah.
I don't normally watch new shows. I checked out this anime because someone online was talking about how great the animation was. Here's the premise. There's a doctor who's, I think, in his 20s, and he loves this idol girl, like a singer, but she's 16, right? So it's already, you're like, oh, this is kind of weird. Well, the idol ends up coming in to his hospital because she's undercover because she's pregnant. She doesn't want anyone to find out she's pregnant. But he ends up developing a relationship with this, not a romantic one, but he is her doctor. So what happens is, this is all at the very beginning. He needs to help deliver her baby. The time has finally come. And he sees this stalker outside the hospital, and he ends up trying to chase down the stalker, and he fucking dies. But don't worry, he's reincarnated as the idol's baby. But he has all of his memories of being a doctor. I was like, I can't. At this point, I think I'm out. The animation is good, and I know people are like, wow, it gets really emotional later. I can't do it.
In fairness, to me, and I know that you're going to disagree with this, but to me, who doesn't watch a lot of anime, I feel like probably a good 40% of anime that I've watched, that's very similar to the premise.
Sure. Oh yeah, dude,
okay.
This is shit like this is very prevalent. That's why I tried to condition people to be like, listen, I'm not the ultimate weeb because there's a lot of stuff that I'm like, nah, too far. And that was one of them. I was like, I can't, I'm out. So anyway.
But how's the anime? Because that's a crazy premise. And that's a crazy enough premise to have, to me, seems like, let's create a premise just to be the draw, But that doesn't really sort of associate itself with something with a high level of animation because of, it's not really an action thing,
Yeah.
How is it visually?
Visually, it's really cool. Like the main character, the idol girl, she has like very specific looking, colorful eyes that are actually really cool to look at. I wish I could remember what the name of the show is.
I'm gonna look this up.
I'll look it up for you right now.
Yeah, it's pretty high on my anime list, which surprised me. But here's the thing with anime, dude, the types of stuff that I see on Crunchyroll that is like the seasonal show. It's like, oh, I got reincarnated in another world as a vending machine. Straight up. This
I heard
is
about
concept.
That one.
Yeah.
Oshinoko?
Oshinoko, that's it. Yeah, that's the name of it. Oshinoko.
Oh, I Googled Idol Doctor Anime. There you go.
There you go.
Yeah. So, okay, my thing that has confused me that I can never get into has been around for quite a long time in my life. Since I looked up a little bit ago, I think it's like 2001 is when the first film in this franchise came out. It was a little older for older people than I was at the time, being just a little kid in 2001. This is going to have to be the Fast and Furious franchise. So it started first just that it was not something I was interested in as a kid. And so I've also never been into cars really ever. And this series just continues to release new entries year after year after year. I think they did peak maybe 1 or 2 movies ago, but they're still immensely popular. There's spin-offs. And here's the thing that I've thought about Fast and Furious. It's like, okay, they started really as hardcore car movies, but then they just kind of went balls to the wall, insanity, action. And I kind of like that. I find that appealing to some degree, where if you're not gonna skirt the line, I'd rather you just go balls to the wall than skirt the line of some kind of realism. That's actually appealing to me. But at the same time, too, I don't like it when things almost are in on the joke too much. And that's the impression that I've got from the last few Fast and Furious movies when I see them advertised, that they're like, hey, let's put this fucking car on a rocket ship and then they'll blow up the moon. It's like, you've gone too far. It's not funny to me, or it's just too much. So I've never understood Fast and Furious. I know that a lot of my peers are really into it, but I don't know. It's always exuded this kind of bro culture, I guess, that has never been appealing to me. And I'm also just not really a big action movie guy. So it's kind of doesn't hit in a lot of different ways for me. So I don't know. Ben, I know you've seen a few of these movies.
No, I haven't.
No, you have. I thought you said you have. You've not seen any of them. Okay.
Okay, there's a story about that, though. I haven't seen them. I think maybe even the most recent too. But at one point, I don't remember. I think it was after 8. I was like, I have accidentally watched 6 Fast and the Furious movies, because the first 2 I intentionally watched.
Sure.
I was pretty young, and they of course were all the rage, and I was in junior high school, somewhere in there, and they came out. And I like cars, so they appealed to me. But yeah, I've by one way or another then watched them all. And there was one point where I was working a job where, like, part of the day my computer would just be taken up by a process I had to run, and I had nothing else that I could do. This was in an office, and I was like, asked my boss, I'm like, what should I do while this is happening? He's like, well, if you have any paperwork, you can do that. I'm like, we don't have paperwork. Like, all my paperwork's on the computer. He's like, yeah, I don't know, just watch a movie or play solitaire or something. So I literally went and was like, oh, here's Fast and the Furious, I'll watch that. And then, like, over time, I just realized, like, I've watched all these. Anyway, I totally agree with you, Dustin. It's kind of like my son Murphy, who you know. He's really funny until he realizes that you think he's fun. Like, he's funny on accident, and then when he realizes people are laughing, he tries to be funny, and he's not funny anymore.
He goes into performance mode.
Yeah,
I know exactly what you're talking about. With him.
And I've told him before, like, if you just stop trying to be funny, you're funny by yourself. Like, I mean, he's 7. It's whatever. But yeah, that's the Fast and the Furious is definitely one of those. And I haven't watched the last couple because, well, time, I guess. But I think I agree that it gets to be too much. But also, I'm the guy who I'll watch, like, the most obscure indie film and it's like super deep, and I I think about it for weeks. And I'll also watch, like, Step Brothers and laugh my balls off because, like, I can enjoy anything. So I think I understand why you wouldn't be into it. Absolutely. This isn't even one of those instances of the many that I would call you a movie prude, because I understand that completely. But
you understand that about me.
Yeah,
my movie prudish tendencies.
Yeah. But I like to think I'm a snob that can a movie snob that can also enjoy just pure bro filth.
Yeah, you could go low brow.
Bro filth.
You go high brow, you go low brow. I love that. I wonder if Cars is the hook for you, Dust, because I remember the first Fast and the Furious movie. It's become, you said it perfectly, it's become very different. Now it's become like anything, like tanks, fighter jets, snowmobiles. When I remember the first movie, is such a great, again, it's like that thing where you're not self-aware. It was the perfect combination of cool and corny, right? And I was a big car guy. Like I was really into car culture when I was a kid and tuning, especially Japanese cars. And that in my 20s and even into my probably early to mid 30s, I was really into that. That first movie, I think a lot of it, I think it started to change and evolve even when Paul Walker was still alive. But there was just something about that first movie. It was about the cars, kids, the hot chicks. It was just, you had the Vin Diesel character, you had the running from the police. Like it was semi-realistic. It was definitely intensified or it was a hyperbolic version of what we knew went on with racing cars and stuff. But it was fun. And it was kind of relatable, but also kind of corny and cheesy, but that made it fun. And the cars were cool.
I always remember the barbecue scene as being like
so good.
Classic.
Good.
Because I was thinking, Dig, I saw this movie in the theater for sure. And I had it on DVD before it was clear. Because what people don't remember about this is the first Fast and the Furious movie definitely did well enough to, and I went and looked because I was like, it didn't do that well. It wasn't like that big. And I went and looked, and it made like $200 million.
Wow.
So enough for it to make a sequel, but that's not beaucoup bucks for like a major blockbuster movie or whatever. So it took time for it to build. I think it was the second one, Too Fast, Too Furious, was huge.
Yeah.
That came out in 2003.
Yeah.
And then Tokyo Drift, I remember a lot of people not liking.
That's where I stopped after that one.
And that was the last one I saw as well.
Yeah.
And I was in college for that. And then, yeah, it kind of just fell off from there. I mean, I have no love for cars at all, but I actually was going to say what I loved about the Fast and the Furious movie. Dagan and I often talk on Knockback about things getting close to like 9/11 as this hinge point. Not because we're from New York or whatever, but just culturally, something was different before 9/11 and after 9/11. And this was like right before 9/11. This was filmed in 2000 and released in 2001. And I love that. I love that it represents LA in that era.
Yeah.
Sepia tones and all of that. There's something very attractive and memorable about the very first movie. And I love Vin Diesel. Unironically, I think I own in what is it, Pitch Black and Riddick. Chronicles of Riddick and all that. He's dope. Those movies are dope. And
he was really
what'd you say?
What about The Pacifier?
I never saw The Pacifier.
Classic Vin Diesel.
Well, he sold out a little bit, right? Which is, but that's fine because I say that's obviously has a there's a value judgment in that word, but I would sell out like that if I was Vin Diesel. So I don't say it with any level of judgment whatsoever, you know. But
wouldn't it, think about this though. If they could have just showed a little restraint, if they left it to one Fast and the Furious movie and never did a franchise out of it, it would be a cult classic now. I mean, it still is in many ways, but now you know what came after, so it sort of dilutes.
It's just almost impossible to imagine a Hollywood apparatus that would ever let that happen. You know, that's what's always been fascinating about Back to the Future, right? Like they're very insistent that's one of those examples where it's not happening. It's not happening.
Right.
Or Ghostbusters. With
only if it did bad would that be left alone.
Right, exactly. And so
it resonated poorly.
So it's just interesting to think about those one-offs. I guess they do exist from that era, but it would just be impossible for me to imagine them being like, nah.
Now you build and you add Charlize Theron and Jason Statham, and it's just like it's growing to such enormous proportions now. It's like, where is it going to go now? I have no idea.
I wonder if there are retcons where it's like Jason Statham's in the background of like the first movie at like a race. There's probably like crazy shit like that people try to. Just like in the last episode of The Last of Us, people think they saw Abby or whatever in the hospital.
Yes.
All right. All right. For me, I wrote down two things. One of them is related to what Ben was saying in a way. I think I'm a little more amenable to animation than you are, Ben. But generally speaking, I tend towards live action as well. But there's one cartoon that I have never, ever, ever understood and has frustrated me to no end. From multiple angles, from the social and the societal angle and the quality angle and the intellectual angle, but it's The Simpsons. Mm-hmm. Like I don't understand it, and I say that as someone who it was tailor made for someone my age and around my age, maybe a little older. Same thing with things like when South Park came out and Family Guy. These things all felt appropriate for my generation for like what we were looking for, but I never, ever, ever understood The Simpsons. And there were times in my life, really intense times, where I tried really hard because I felt like I was missing something with my friends. My friends were all into it. This was probably during I don't know, the 6th, 7th, 8th seasons or whatever. And I'm sitting there after school watching these goddamn shows, knowing they're on at 6 or 6:30 or whatever on these random local channels, and just sitting there. I'm like, this isn't really very funny or interesting at all. I don't understand it. And I guess I intellectually get what people love about those first 10 seasons or so, but that's my favorite part about Simpsons fandom is just that, oh, it's only really the first 6 seasons. So I'm like, it's been bad for 27 years is what you're saying.
Right. And somehow it's still going.
And it's still, it goes back to the origins of Fox. That's how old the show is like this show was one of Fox's very first hits, up there with like Married with Children and Tracy Ullman, obviously, which is where it comes from, and all of the rest. Arsenio. Like, it's just so interesting that all of those things have gone in their different directions. We've even had enough time for Arsenio to reboot his show, for Tracy Ullman to do a bunch of different funny shit, all these different things. But The Simpsons has just existed in, I mean, God, what's his name that played Al? Why can't I think of his name? He's like famous for a bunch of other, like, people don't even really think about that show with him anymore.
Yeah.
That's how much time has passed. Same thing with Peggy.
Yeah.
And so, and by the way, Al Bundy is one of the all-time great characters. Like, still, like his burn reels on YouTube, like where he's just making fun of fat women at the shoe store or whatever. It's just like, it's hysterical. But I just never got The Simpsons, and it frustrates me to no end. And I remember when I was at IGN, we would go to like monthly movie jaunts during the day. They would just pay for us to go see a movie. It was kind of cool. And we went and saw the Simpsons movie. I remember that must have been, what was it? Summer 2007 or summer 2008. One of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's right.
I remember the poster was like a donut and all of this. And I remember watching and being in there and being like, this sucks. Like what am I missing here? So you have to accept that you're the one who's missing out in this case, like whatever it is. But it's funny, dude. I have a picture of myself from 2nd or 3rd grade at field day. So this was in 1991, maybe. And lo and behold, the dude next to me, Mike, who I haven't talked to him in many years, but I know who it is. Went to high school with him, is holding a cooler with water in it with fucking Bart Simpson on it. And you know, that's what it reminded me of, was people act like it's very highbrow and sophisticated. And I'm like, is it really? Because there were fucking toddlers that were into it during that era and little kids in elementary school and all of this. So I'm not entirely positive. It could be one of those things where it aims high and it aims low. And so there's like something there for everyone. And that might be true. But to act like it's this very, very highbrow thing, like in my opinion, a show like South Park is not only much more sophisticated, but 25,000 times funnier, right? And really nails. It has like no sacred cows and just goes after things. And I think, and this was an unpopular thing I said at IGN many years ago, that people once in a while still bring up, not as much as the Vita was going to beat the DS thing, but kind of up there, which is that I was like, Family Guy is so much better than The Simpsons, and why people give Family Guy so much. They're very similar 30-minute Fox cartoons. Like to compare them makes a lot of sense in my opinion.
Yeah, very similar.
Family Guy is fucking hysterical, or at least it was. I haven't seen it in years. I don't know. But those first few seasons, then it get canceled, then it comes back for a few years. That shit's awesome. There's a billion funny things in there. And so it's not that I don't have an admiration for funny cartoons. It's like when I played the South Park RPGs, the first one from Obsidian, the second one from Ubisoft. Those games are awesome, and they really reminded me how funny that universe is and how funny that show is. But there's just nothing like that for The Simpsons for me. So that was a major thing I wanted to bring up. And my kind of secondary thing I brought up, although it's really, again, a me thing, is just I've never understood the obsession with online multiplayer. Why the antisocial sect of entertainment people, video game players, are obsessed with playing with each other has never made any sense to me. And video games, I think, shine most when they're campaign oriented and single player oriented, but people go in for this whole different thing that I couldn't even begin to care about at all. And it's just this whole thing that's actually valuable and important and vital. And yet I'm like,
it's everything now.
And I'm just, what the fuck do you want to play with someone for? Weren't video games an escape from the world, an escape from people and all that? So I've always been befuddled by that. I've been sucked in a few times over the years by games. Soldier of Fortune on the PC when I was in high school. I loved that game for some reason. Rainbow Six 3, as I've said before, and Halo 2, games like that. And the most recent multiplayer game that I played for any amount of time was The Last of Us. And that was 10 years ago. And I frankly did it for the trophies. I ended up getting sucked in because I was actually good at it, which was kind of cool because I had it for so long before it came out. So when people were online playing, I was murdering people. It was awesome. But once everything balances out and my real lack of skill in video games comes out, then I can't play those games anymore. So those were the two things I thought of, Dake, in terms of
I love
the question.
I see. I echo your sentiments about online multiplayer. Like, I never really got it. I'm an old man. That whole era passed me by. It was always about gaming. I mean, there was gaming shoulder to shoulder with your friends in the arcade or even sitting on the couch together at home. But yeah, that's something that missed me. But it does make sense to me in that, yes, it is a lot of, not everybody, but it is a lot of introverted, more socially awkward people. But that is their social interaction. I think for a lot of people that like online, that, you know, that is their outlet for socializing. So I do understand it from afar, but for me, it's the same thing. Kyle, you'll remember too with The Simpsons, because I feel the same way. It's almost like a mixture of how you feel about The Simpsons and how Ben feels this kind of hard to articulate feeling about just animated short form content in general. I've always gotten the same thing. You know this with The Simpsons, and our friend PJ, my best friend, has for years, he's a huge Simpsons fan, dating back to being a kid. That's one thing, the staying power of this show, right? Since 86, 87, whenever it started, still going. He's been preaching the gospel of The Simpsons to us for years. And it's interesting about him because, don't get me wrong, PJ's super smart. He's definitely even a genius in some aspects. One of the funniest people I know, one of the quickest, but you wouldn't think of him as an academic, right? But there's just something that's always spoken to him about that show. He never missed an episode. And he would always be like, I don't understand why you guys don't like it, especially Dagan. He's like such an animation mark and everything. But it's a weird thing because I think Kyle's right. It kind of hits the target all over the place in terms of appeal. I think it centers around kid characters. It's goofy. There's a lot of slapstick. You have the bright primary colors. It looks very cartoony. So it's appealing to little ones, I think, in that respect. But it's also probably the first sitcom cartoon, at least, that was really about the writing. You know, it was all about the ideas and the writing and that level of sophistication. And I think having to tailor it for network TV too, and kind of be, irreverent, but still have to operate on a somewhat acceptable level where they couldn't do what Parker and Stone were doing with South Park on Comedy Central. They had to keep it at a certain level for network television and all of that stuff. But there's still something in there while appreciating it for all those things. And listen, like the visual consistency and cohesion, the art direction, you may not love the way it looks, but there's certainly something over the years where it's become like a proper cohesive brand visually. So there's a lot to appreciate there, but there's just something for me that I'm just like, it doesn't have that hook. It just hasn't interested me enough to I've really gone to great lengths. I bought DVD box sets that are some of them are still in the shrink wrap. I'm just like, I can't bring myself. It's one of those things where it's like, I can't bring myself to really spend my time with this when there's other stuff, And I wonder with the wrestling thing too, Ben, you said it's so good just in going out and kicking it over to the next topic. I think there was a big resurgence. If you think back to my heyday with it, Mean Gene Okerlund and Hulk Hogan and Rowdy Roddy and Junkyard Dog and Iron Sheik kind of moved into that era that you said where it was Sting and The Rock and The Undertaker and that sort of thing. But I wonder if the thing that bothered me the most was knowing that it was fake. I wonder if that's the thing, that it was just like, I know this is kind of staged. It's put on. They're not really doing it. They don't really hate each other, that type of thing. And that,
well, sometimes they really hate each other.
I mean, no. I was saying they don't hate each other.
Yeah,
they do hit each other.
No,
they would like, they would like break.
He said he never mind. Go on.
Yeah. Like they don't dislike each other. You know what I mean? Like that animosity wasn't real. It was theatrical. You know what I mean? It was this thing where it was, it was a show. And I think some people liked it for that as kids. Like they were just entertained by it. But it was one of those things where I felt like maybe they were trying to pull the wool. Because you remember there was that period where we asked, is this real? Is it fake? I don't know. I don't get it. Maybe like that initial 2 or 3 years that it became popular, right?
Well,
Where it was like,
I still remember like kids getting in fights at school, arguing over whether it was fake or not. And by that point, like the adults all knew for
Right.
sure.
Yeah,
But like the kids still didn't.
It was funny. The question about was it real or was it fake was interesting. I was into it for a while. I never had the toys or anything. I was not like a mega fan or anything, but
yeah,
it was interesting. I love thinking about wrestling though from the adult's point of view. Micah and I talk about it a lot because she was a big fan of wrestling when she was younger, and I'm like, it's really insane. It's insanity when you think about it. Like what is going on here?
Mm-hmm.
What is this? These two, like everyone, we're in this arena we're in Madison Square Garden. These two dudes are beefing with each other, having a fake fight that's scripted in some way. It's very weird.
it was
It's very weird.
It was a mixture of entertainment and, sport. It speaks to what we like, especially in culture, especially Americans, right? Like it kind of encapsulates everything that we go in for. So it makes sense. But I didn't realize, dude, that it started in the early 70s.
Mm-hmm.
In Allentown and Philly. And I don't know what you may know, Ben, you guys may know, or our audience may know, but I don't know what the thing was that sort of made it catch fire in the early to mid 80s, having been around already for a decade at least prior to that.
It comes from
personalities.
I was going to say, weren't there like a bunch of like geographically centered circuits in the 60s and 70s, and they all kind of fed into this one federation, I guess, that would eventually arise or something. It is really interesting. It's weird. It's weird, dude. Like I think wrestling is weird just from it's fine. It's entertainment like anything else, but it's just this very interesting, unique, fake thing. Like it's presented like kind of like a sport in some way, but we assume the NFL games are real. Mm-hmm. Right. I don't know. I don't get it either.
And now it's MMA. Now it's totally real. And I can't even watch that stuff, man.
Yeah.
I just don't understand. Like if you put me in that ring with one of those guys, I'd be dead within like a second, 2 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. It would be over. I'd be dead. Yeah. It's too disturbing.
All right, Dagan, are you satisfied?
Yeah. Thanks for that, guys. That was good.
All right. I go back to the die to see who will go next. 1 and 2 are taken. So let's see if we get a 3 or a 4 first. We got a 3. That means Dustin.
Oh, it's me. Okay.
You're next.
To me.
So my topic, when I wrote it to you guys, I was like, I don't know exactly how to put this together, but I thought that this would work for this crew. My topic is about masculinity, expectations, and standards, because this is something that I don't want to say has been tough for me, but something that has come up at different points in my life, just because I found that throughout my life, I've always been frustrated with what a lot of people would consider, or like what you need to do, or how you need to act, or the things you need to like in order to be considered manly or masculine, or even if you just don't like things, it's like you're the opposite. That's effeminate. It's not one of those things. It's like, oh, you like that drink, you're a girl. That's different. Like that's just a funny joke or whatever. But especially growing up in Western PA, it's like I can go fishing. I probably could go hunting, but I don't want to do that at all. There are things that like that are like, for me, a big one is like sports. I don't care about sports at all. I tried to at one point, and I think that was more of from a standpoint of trying to fit in with people at school.
What sport did you try to get into?
Football.
Steelers?
Yeah, I guess I would say I followed the Steelers. Yeah. But that was like 6th grade, I think. And I don't like the thing is that I'm not one of those guys that has like a deep, passionate hate for sports or anything like that. I just, I don't care for it. I can take it or leave it. In fact, I will say now that like in the last few years, like the last few Super Bowl parties or something I've been to, I'll watch the game and I'll actually enjoy watching it. I know for the most part what's going on, but, I remember in particular, though, that this kind of came to a head in a lot of ways when in high school. And I guess that makes sense where there's like, kids that are not that I was like really bullied, but every once in a while, you would have something like that where I remember one time we were filming something for, our morning announcements or something. And me and my friend were filming something in the hallway, and this kid just shouted out, "You guys are fucking gay." And then like sped away and stuff like that, I still think about that to this day, and it's really funny now, but so I guess I'm just curious for you guys, just because I know that I'm assuming that you guys are often having the similar hobbies to me and stuff like that, is that to me the idea of like being a man is totally different. Like the idea of like, especially now as I get older and look to have a family and stuff, it's like being, and this is very traditional and some people might not like this, but like being the head of your house, being the leader of your house, taking care of things when you need to. Things like that is something that's always been a lot more important to me in terms of manhood. Being a good friend, when your friend needs help, you help them, stuff like that. You know what I mean? So I don't know who to throw this to. Dagan, I'll throw this to you. I feel like we're kind of kindred spirits in this way, in that I don't see you going out shooting a deer or wanting to, whatever, all these different things. How do you feel about this? Is this something that you've, I don't want to say struggled with, that makes it sound more serious, but something that you've dealt with, I guess?
Yeah, no, I mean, struggle is kind of a fair, that's apropos. I mean, the first thing I thought of when you emailed about this was our dad. Like we grew up with the consummate man in terms of what I always perceived as, the epitome of manhood and masculinity,
with the Daisy Dukes.
With the Daisy Dukes and work boots. But that all played into, I'm going to wear whatever I want. You're not going to say a word to me.
Totally.
Because who would dare?
Yeah.
I think my dad now, in turning 73, I think he'd still beat the shit out of me. Honestly, I don't.
Oh my God, he would fucking kill me. Dude.
It wouldn't even be close.
Yeah.
He's first of all, he's 6'3". Colin got some of the tall genes. I got the pygmy genes. Sorry, pygmies, but I'm pretty short. You can't tell on camera. Let me adjust
sit up straight. There you go.
Adjust my posture.
Are you and I the same height, Dagan? You a little taller than me, maybe?
Maybe a little bit taller, but not much.
Man,
I don't think it's much. I know because we were taking pictures with people at Too Many Games recently this summer, right?
Do you guys care that you're shorter? It seems like such a people talk about white privilege and male privilege and all these things. The one thing that I think I've been most self-conscious of, or conscious of, let's just say conscious of, in my life as I've gotten older is tall privilege. I've taken it for granted that I'm 6 feet tall. Yeah. And just that I'm looked at as like tall enough for women, and that you read all this shit, especially online, about, the short king and all of this kind of stuff. I've talked to Chris a little bit about this too. And to me, I'm like, I've never heard anyone talk about anyone's height in my life, good or bad, about like their interact. He's too short or he's too tall. But yet I also realize that I've just kind of waded through my adult life being above average height. Is that something that's in people are literally getting fucking things shoved into their legs to make them taller?
Oh, to make them tall. Sure.
It's crazy.
And I find that
are
insane.
you guys worried about that at all?
I've always felt that I've never felt truly self-conscious about my height, but I feel like I'm within an acceptable range still where it's fine. You know what I mean? Like if I was a decent amount shorter, then I think that maybe I would feel short about it. But I think that a lot of times now, maybe this is just a thing that like we don't experience this because we don't surround ourselves with shallow people. But I've never heard anyone like, oh, like you said, you hear about that stuff happening because people are willing to alter themselves to be taller. But I've never had an interaction with a girl that I was interested in or something like that where they're like, or someone like, oh, they said you were too short.
Imagine learning to walk again with that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, that's
just fucking crazy.
Oh
just
yeah,
take it. If you're built a certain way, that's just the way you are.
Right. That's what do you do? Right. Yeah. There is a social stigma. I mean, with me, it's been weird because I'm 5'9", right? Supposedly when I graduated, even on my driver's license still, it says 5'10". That's an average height. But I think so. I don't know if it was jumping downstairs for so many years or whatever, but supposedly I lost an inch in there somewhere. So at 5'9", it's not like a terrible height, but
Don't
you certainly
fill in
would
how
like
tall
to have
you
a
are?
couple of inches, right? You'd like, there's nothing wrong with being taller unless you're north of a certain specific height, and then you're a freak, right? Like if you're taller than, I don't know what the number is, 6'5", then now it's getting freakish. But I know because my best friend, one of my best friends, is having so many problems with dating. He's my exact age. He's divorced, and he's trying to date, and he's out there, but he does see a thing, like almost a bias against him, because he's a handsome dude. But I think when they get wind of his height after that first initial meeting, actual meeting in person and stuff, he's like, yeah, I think they're turned off because I'm kind of short. I don't know what he is exactly. Maybe he's 5'5", 5'6", something like that.
Micah's dad is 5'2".
Is he really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty. I'm trying
I always
to think,
tell Mike I'm going to throw him in a closet or something next time I see him. I'm going to beat him up, rough him up a little bit. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so our barometer for masculinity was always my dad. And a lot of it was his occupation. We ran into burning buildings. He was a firefighter, in a very busy neighborhood in Brooklyn, a bad neighborhood. And just always, I guess, as I got older, realizing, first of all, the level of not only physical strength and having to have the tools physically to do what he did, but just that courage, and always kind of wondering as a little kid, like when I get older, whether or not I found myself interested in that line of work, but would I have the ability to do that? Would I have the bravery to jump into a burning building and rescue people? So I always looked at him for that. But the other thing with our dad was, even on his downtime, that's what he did. He built brick walls and built decks, and he worked with his hands, and he was a brilliant woodworker, and he was out in the yard, and he toiled and he worked, and it seemed he worked on the cars. He had the cars up on the jack, and he was fixing something. He embodied all of those things that we know as like manly things, manly man things. And for him, it wasn't artificial or put on. That's what he did. That's what he knew. That's what he enjoyed. But as I got older, from a very early age, I was like, yeah, cartoons, action figures. I love robots. You know what I mean? I love Godzilla movies. It was kind of like, I would think to myself, like, drawing, art and drawing, like these were things that were such a departure from what I saw. Like that primary male presence in my life seemed so different. Like there seemed to be such a divergence between what I dug and what he enjoyed. But we also I had, especially when I was young, my grandfather, who was kind of the opposite, like a very, very sort of, he was masculine in his own way. He was a married man, obviously, but kind of metrosexual before that was a thing. Like cared about his clothes, cared about his watches, really enjoyed movies. He's the guy who taught me how to draw. He loved watching Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers on TV. He liked ballet. He was a man through and through, but he kind of dug all these things that my dad didn't. The common thing with both of those dudes were two of the biggest male presence in my life was that they both didn't like sports. Neither one liked sports at all, weren't into it at all, which I can't think of another friend's dad growing up who wasn't into sports in some way, whether they golfed or whether they were a consummate Yankees fan or whether they had the football game on every Sunday. Every other dad and grandfather, for that matter, seemed to be hooked into sports, except for those two guys, which was interesting. And my thing with sports, Dust, was that I really loved playing sports, especially baseball and football when I was a kid, but I was so mediocre at everything I tried. And I think that's what ultimately turned me off about sports. Not that I didn't enjoy playing, not that I didn't enjoy watching sports, but even in my immediate sphere, like I always had a friend or two that were better than me at something, let alone getting into school and playing in gym class. I was like middle of the road at everything. So that was a thing that, again, if I was better at basketball, I would have embraced that athletic, quote unquote, manly side of myself growing up in the 80s. But it wasn't really until I found skateboarding that I found myself physically good at something. But there was always a thing, and my dad never, Colin will tell you the same thing growing up 10 or 11 years apart, but he never pressured us to walk in his tracks with anything, whether that was his career or being able to work on cars or being awesome at woodworking or being able to put the in-ground sprinklers in by himself. Like my dad was just really dialed in from, I think really from an engineering perspective. You know, he was really good at thinking three-dimensionally and problem solving and figuring things out. And I was good at drawing. Like that was my thing. But he never pressured us to walk in his footsteps or follow him in any way. He tried to impart what he knew, but he would always say, you know, grow up to do what you love. It doesn't matter what it is. As long as you're happy, you find that thing, you embrace it and you do what you do. Don't waste your talent. Do what you find that you love. But I always, as I got older and I went into animation for a living, it's been 25 years now, there was always from the beginning that piece of me that was like, I'm not doing something important like my dad did. You know, like that's less pursuing whatever that the masculine side of things or being a man. But that was more of my doing something substantive, you know? And when 9/11 happened, Colin remembers this brief blip of time, this era that I had. I was like, I'm going to go back to school, talk about John Jay College Criminal Justice. I was going to enroll and go to school for law enforcement after that happened because I really felt the tug. I was only a few years into my career at that point. Graduated from art school in 98. So 2001, 2002, I was really feeling the epitome of that pull of like, maybe go do something and follow more in your dad's footsteps. Again, I wasn't thinking firefighting, but I was definitely thinking law enforcement of some kind. You know, so probably on a federal level, I was thinking like DEA, ATF, that sort of thing, which a lot of people that know me, I think would even be surprised to hear that. But there was that thing of like, this is maybe my way of doing that thing I always felt and following in my dad's footsteps and sort of following through with my admiration for him over the years. But again, I have to say that never came from him. There was never a pressure of like, here's the hammer and nails, you better get good at this. Or here's a wrench, I want you to, you know, be able to tweak the engine. There were certain things that I think he did pass down. I love cars. You know, I'm really kind of, I'm a car guy through and through, but I don't want to work on them. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I love cars. I admire them. I like to have them. I love to drive them, but I don't want to open the hood and wrench on it. I just don't. Like, that's not my passion. So I guess some of the things he passed on in, you know, like a halfway sort of manner, but I never, you know, that was the cool thing about, I still question myself and kind of like, how did this apple fall from that tree? I don't know. Like sometimes I don't know, but it was never a thing where he made me feel like that, which is kind of cool. Like he gave me the autonomy to choose. And, you know, maybe I got a lot of that thing. Like maybe I got a lot of the creative, the artistic from the other side of the family, from my mom's dad. And then, you know, he asserted his influence and maybe some of that fell short. And then we had our Uncle Mike, which was another influence as far as maybe comedy and levity and an interest in sports, because he's the only man we grew up with that really had an interest in athletics and professional sports and following teams and all that kind of thing. But I still think to myself, wouldn't it be cool to have as a homeowner and as a dad, I'm still just not naturally a handy person. Like I'm not going to pick up a power tool and know how to use it. I have the work ethic to want to do it, but I'm not good at it. And it's not an interest. Like I'm not like fixing to go to Lowe's. Like, let's look at the latest Ryobis. Like I don't, it's out of necessity, right? Like I'm going to pick up the Makita, but I'm not like in the Makita catalog. Like,
how do you guys feel about the hardware store overall? Anytime I have to go there, it's always with my dad because he's helping me with a project. My whole life, I'm like, oh no, here we go, Home Depot.
It reminds me of my dad, for sure. You know,
I remember being stuck in there for, it felt like hours sometimes because my dad had to like figure out what piece he needed. You have to find someone to help him. That person doesn't know. Then you're in the wrong area, but you also, we got to get this one last thing. But then you walk by something else.
I feel totally, nothing makes me feel more inadequate than a Home Depot.
Yeah. Absolute intimidation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's how I feel to this day.
That's the frustrating thing, Dagan. You talk about this specifically with cars. I've always had a somewhat self-imposed, but also from others, guilt about not knowing how to fix and sometimes even maintain my car, which the maintenance part is important. But there's a lot of things I have no idea about with cars, period. And that's always felt like a hit on my ego in some ways. But I'm like, I can fix your computer. I can figure out what part is wrong with it. I can replace it. I can help you build an entire computer. I can help you pick what phone. I can help you pick what TV. I know about all these things. It's mostly useless, but
No, that's really useful, dude. I couldn't do any. I couldn't build you a fucking Lego house.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, build you a computer. I could maybe try. I can't do shit. You want to talk about useless? I totally understand what you're saying. I wanted to jump in here because please, because I think it'll be it's linear with me and Dagan because we were raised by the same people. But I'm glad Dagan went on about our father specifically because I feel a lot of that where the masculine energy radiating from my dad was undeniable, like at all times. But it was quickly instructive as a young formative kid. It's like, this is not your contemporary masculine energy. And this is, I couldn't help but think about this, and some people are going to roll their eyes, but whatever. This is what I find so regrettable about like trans stuff in some way. It's not like people doing what they want with their bodies. I guess it's like, whatever, do what you want. It's fine from that libertarian perspective. I have no problem. But it's more that we've come to limit manliness to meaning masculinity when in my opinion, those are kind of two different things. And that a man is just as much of a man wearing makeup and a dress and calling himself a man, as opposed to someone who he's a feminine man, as opposed to a masculine man. And I've always felt on that kind of gradient that I'm much more towards like the feminine man in a lot of different ways. And that's why I've always been like, why do people want to act like there's something else? It's like, just be what you are, but to whatever nth degree. Right. Not like, in other words, we need to open the spectrum of what manliness and womanhood or whatever is without just jumping over the barriers because you identify more with the masculinity or the femininity, which shouldn't necessarily be only tied to those things because they're expressions, right?
Yeah, shades.
Right. So that's why I've always been very confused about all of that, because it's like, it's not, in my opinion, necessary, because David Bowie was a fucking man, dude. Like, in all of his makeup and all of his femininity. Prince is a man, right? And so I think as a kid, I always kind of understood that it was a little more fluid than that. And I think it was due to those different inspirations, the fatherly inspiration, Uncle Mike being really formative with sports and identifying that and seeing that play out with our nephews and with Dagan's kids and others, where like our sister Dana and our brother-in-law Derek have 3 boys, and they're all very different from each other, you know, but they're all one of them is gay, but they're all masculine in their own way, and they're all men and boys in their own way as well. And I think I fit somewhere within that spectrum. So I love the loose, I guess what Dagan was identifying as that loose perspective of it. It's not just about muscles, and although it was with our dad, and it's not about sports because it was that with Uncle Mike, but it's more about your own disposition. And I think I'm a man, right? I think I'm manly. And what I mean by that is that I think I encapsulate taking care of people and doing the right thing and honor and all of that, but I am not masculine. I don't encapsulate I work out and all that, but I'm not like the gym bro, the gym rat, really fucking hyper aggressive and whatever kind of masculinity might encompass. And so I totally understand what you're saying. I feel very inadequate as a man in many different ways, actually, but that's just whatever. I am who I am, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of safe to tap into what you would describe as maybe like femininity or whatever, womanliness, or like those kinds of things, doting, family, child care, those kinds of things, like that kind of stuff crosses over. So it's what's fun about this era, I guess, as opposed to like the Victorian era, is that we don't have these like very delineated columns that you fit in. And so I've never really, I love sports, love sports, but I don't think that makes me a man. Right. So I don't know if any of that makes sense to you, Dustin.
No, well, I think that's one of the things that is interesting, and not to make this too political, but you're right about the spectrum aspect. You're right that there's not just two pillars, but at the same time, a lot of society does push that it's like, oh, this 5-year-old is showing an interest in clothes instead of a truck. Maybe he's actually a girl. And it's like,
Right.
no. Like there's okay for there to be that spectrum. But at the same time, I also feel like I agree with you where it's like, well, there's got to be a limit on this to some degree as well. We can't just blur all definitions, right?
Yeah, well, I think like a man or a boy, we know what that is physically, of course, genetically down to the DNA.
Sure.
And I think that they're predisposed to certain things. But what I think we need to say is when they're not, that doesn't make them any less of a man or a boy. It just means that they're not a man predisposed to the same loves and interests. He wants to be a nurse. That doesn't make him that doesn't even make him gay. That doesn't make him a woman, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of thing I feel. I've always felt that way. That's why it's always really, that's why gay rights and all that kind of stuff like really always vibed with me, and it always was very nonsensical, any argument against, because I'm like, it's just about the interpretation of the way you are living your own life within these certain pre-described notions and I guess even stereotypes. And when you break out of them, that's just the way it is. It doesn't mean that we need to like fucking burn the whole house down or that it's this scary thing. So I guess that's what I'm saying. So it would be very unmasculine, I guess, for me to not feel at home in a Home Depot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've always felt frustrated. Yeah, it's so complicated because in one sense I'm arguing that we shouldn't have such strict definitions on masculinity. At the same time, I'm like, we should have some definitions where, things are all over the place. Now, I remember specifically, I guess this isn't a masculine thing, but it is something that frustrated me in this realm. And then Ben, I definitely want to get you in here too, is that I remember when Force Awakens came out, and whatever, this isn't about the quality of that movie or Star Wars in general, but there's that whole thing where they're like, Finn and Poe, they're friends, they should be gay. Don't you see how they've got this gay energy going on, that they've got something, they hug in the movie, they're happy to see each other. This pissed me off, and it's not because I'm against gay relationships or anything. It's like, what's wrong with these two boys being bros? Caring about each other.
Just like Han and Luke.
Yeah, giving each other, happy to see you. Here's a hug. It pissed me off so bad.
Why aren't Han and Luke fucking?
Yeah. It's like trying to shoehorn this type of relationship. And like I said, that's kind of off topic a little bit, but I think it's true that it's like, why are we looking for these things where they're not? But Ben, you haven't had a chance to jump in here yet. So how are you feeling about this?
Yeah, I think that kind of like Colin was talking about having tall privilege, which I guess he and I are about the same height, so I probably have that too, I guess. But I guess I kind of also have masculine privilege because I've never thought about it. And I've never thought like less of someone else. So I've always been interested in like traditional boy things, I guess. But I've never thought it was weird if somebody wasn't. Maybe when I was a kid, but I don't really remember any of those instances for sure. I was interested in hunting and fishing and cars and girls and like all the bro things to be interested in, like all the manly things traditionally we think of. But where I went to school, like we were kind of around a lot of farm ground too. And so there were plenty of girls who were tomboys and plenty of girls who went hunting and knew about cars and like, went fishing and everything else. So it wasn't like weird that girls were into boy things because they were just things. That's not to say I didn't know there was a difference, because like it's like when people say they're colorblind. I know what their intention on saying that is. You notice those things, but yeah. So I always enjoyed those things. I mean, I don't hunt anymore, and my wife wants me to because she wants venison, and I'm like, look, I got tired of being cold and being wet and having to cut the anus out of the deer to get its guts out. Like I'm just like I just got tired of that. I don't want to do it anymore. I don't think that makes me less of a man. It just means I can just, whatever. So yeah, I always enjoyed guy things. I built a car with my dad in high school. Like, I don't know. So, but I remember one time, and this really struck me as odd. We were on our way to church. My wife and I were on our way to church. And I guess a kid saw us, and this is when I was the mayor. So I, he was waving at me, real excited or whatever. And I talked to his dad later, and he's like, yeah, he thought it was weird that you weren't driving, that your wife was driving. I was like, why? He's like, well, he said that men should be the one who drive. And like, I don't think this guy was saying that, but
that kid was sexist.
And I was like, what? And I realized, like, in my head, like, yeah, I feel like most of the time when I see a husband and wife or man and woman or, a couple of some sort driving around, 95% of the time it's probably the man driving, but I've never thought about why. And then I was like, oh yeah, my dad always drove as a kid. I usually drive, but I was just like, I just woke up 10 minutes ago. She was already in the car. I didn't even think about it. So like just that interesting thing of like what kinds of things are considered what the man is supposed to do. And my wife and I mean, I can fix just about anything, but I don't know how to do it. I look it up and figure it out. But that honestly probably comes more from a place of cheapness or just not having resources in my life rather than wanting to do that. But yeah, Dustin, maybe the fact that you don't like cars or sports and you have a small animated Japanese woman on your desk.
Yeah, I thought about that.
That might make you a little bit feminine, but other than that, no, I mean, like, I've never thought, and I've also, I guess, while I was into like cars and sports and girls, I was also into video games and comic book heroes and stuff like that. So I don't know. I guess for me, I've never thought of someone as not I've thought of someone as not masculine, but I've never thought that certain things define masculinity. But I've also never been in the position where someone has said I wasn't masculine or implied that in any way. I've had a beard since I was 13. I guess that probably helps a little bit, but yeah. So,
yeah. Well, yeah. I want to ask you about one thing. I don't know if this has been revealed on the show, something about you. And I know it's something you're not embarrassed about, but you were into dance.
In a way. Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah.
Well, did that come into play at all? But I think
like,
if you
like
have a
dance
beard,
moms or something.
Right. The ballroom dancing, right?
I used to, yeah, I took ballroom dancing. I used to instruct ballroom dancing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was in a state, man, this is one of those things I roll out to people like on a slow basis. Okay. But I guess it's time.
It's appropriate. Let's do it.
I won a state finals for ballroom dancing.
What?
Viennese waltz. Yeah.
What?
So this is a Gene Park type reveal here.
That really is. This is deep lore.
No, see, you pulled it out of me. Gene would have been like, "Oh, and by the way,
I won the state championship and I fucked the judge." Or something. Yeah, that's the Gene Park version.
All of the judges, even the men.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I guess I was in much better shape in college than I am now. So I guess I was just I was fit and strong and able to, lead very well. And don't ask me to do any dances now. I don't know how. I forget most of I'm sure it's like riding a bike to some extent, but yeah, no, I don't see even that. Like the first year I took ballroom dance in college, it was because it fit my schedule. And I took it and golf that semester. As my like athletics, because I wanted to do them both in the same semester and for that year. And I didn't feel weird about it at all. And there were a ton of other guys in the class, and most of them not nearly as like varied interest as I had. Many of them were more singular focused. No, I never felt weird about that. And anytime I've ever told anybody that, I'm trying to think, maybe people just held it back. I was never presented with, well, that's kind of girly. It was always like, what? Like,
well, you were in college, which helps.
That probably, yeah. If I had started like tap dance when I was 4 years old or something, then maybe that would be a little more. I would have gotten that reaction a little more.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
girls must have loved it, Ben.
Yeah.
Like I could see. Yeah, like there's no girl I know that wouldn't love to have a man that could dance.
I was dating a girl, and I had dated her for years in high school and into college. I'm not married to that girl, and she was uninterested pretty much.
That's so weird.
And it's funny because that woman took like dance classes, but she did like tap and jazz and all that kind of stuff all the way from when she was a little kid up through high school. but she was mostly uninterested in the ballroom dance side of things. And I have no idea if girls liked it, because obviously you like notice girls and stuff, but I was uninterested in like pursuing a romantic relationship because I was in a romantic relationship. And I'm just like, man, all that time, who knows what could have happened, you know, during that time. I'm dancing with girls every day.
Many such cases.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
All right. Are you satisfied?
I'm 100% satisfied.
All right, my friend. Then that leaves us with Ben. You're leading your cleanup today.
Yeah. I was going to talk about this last time I was on, but I try to pick topics that I think everybody has at least some experience with. And I just didn't know if Jaffe, because that's who I was on with last time, I didn't know if he would have any experiences. But I know that all four of us have had at least a little experience with roommates of some kind.
Oh, yeah.
And so I guess we could just talk about any like experiences with roommates. Don't necessarily want to talk about like romantic partners or something like that. But like, you know, when we've lived with other people who were not either related to us or in a relationship romantically with us. And I don't know, just funny stories or like irritations or whatever. It doesn't have to be anything like super profound or anything, but I'll lead off. I had a roommate. His name was Josh. Great guy. I like him a lot. Like we have no beef or anything, but we lived in a duplex, and this was after I got out of college and while I like had my first out of college job, you know, professional job. And he was about a year ahead of me, but he was in a very similar situation. And then we met through a mutual friend, and he had a space available, and moved in with him and a couple other guys. And it was one of those things where like every day he'd get home slightly before me from work. And I always said like, hey, you know, my video game consoles are in my room. I'm not putting them in the main room, sorry, but they're in my room. You're welcome to play. We should get together and play. And I mean, it started out as like, oh, let's all hang out and play like split screen Halo. And then it became more like, hey, do you mind if I use your Xbox while you're away on this work trip or whatever? And I was like, yeah, whatever. I don't care. I don't have anything to hide in my like 10 square foot room, whatever. And it got to the point where it was like, I would come home with like a new game or something and be so excited after work and working like a 14-hour day or something to come home and just sit down in my room and be alone and play a game. And I'd come home and he'd be like in there, had been sprawled out for hours, you know, feet up on my stuff with the socks off. And then he'd be like, hey, I'm playing right now, but you're welcome to play after I'm done. And I'm like, wait, this is my room and my stuff. So it just got to the point where finally I was just like, hey, you should find a different hobby. Like I wasn't like mean about it because we were friends and I liked him pretty, you know, in every other way possible. But it just got to the point where I was like irritated. I was like, I was nice to this guy, and here he is playing with my stuff. And this is the only thing I like have as a hobby at this point in my life. So I don't know. That was just one experience, one goofy story where I was just like, maybe I shouldn't be nice to people anymore. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't let them touch my stuff. But I do. But anyway, Dustin, I know you had a little bit. I mean, I've got other stories, of course, too. But you had a experience.
Yeah, unique experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I graduated shortly after that summer is when my dad first took a job in the DC area. And they weren't really sure if it was going to be long term or if they were going to like it or whatever. And so they weren't really ready to sell the house yet, though they did offer for me to go with them at the time and then figure out some kind of college situation there. I didn't want to do that. Holly and I were seriously dating at that point, didn't want to go and make that long term. So the option we came up with is that I would stay and continue to live in this house. This is the house they owned before I bought it from them. And I would get 2 roommates, and I would go to community college and I'd have 2 roommates here. The rent for them was really cheap, mainly just to kind of like maintain things while they were gone, and not even quite that. But so I got 2 roommates that were 2 friends from high school that lived with me, while I think both of them were also going to community college, though that changed over the course of, I think, a year and a half that we had this place. We jokingly at the very beginning were like, oh yeah, this is the bro pad, ha ha ha, because we knew that we weren't like bro dudes at all. But that just ended up becoming the nickname of this place. It was the bro pad era of my life. And we had a lot of good times. And as with any roommate situation, there's like tons of good times where you're hanging out. We would play Smash Brothers Brawl all the time on Wii, make meals together with our friends and stuff like that. Many good times. Many bad times also where you want to fucking kill each other. My one roommate in particular would just randomly, he would get up just before me and shower for 30 to 35 minutes when I need to go. It's just like, bro, what are you doing? What are you doing in there? And he would sing in the shower too, really loud, not on key, just totally oblivious to anyone else in the house, stuff like that. We had some funny situations too. My one roommate, Ian, he was in my wedding. I haven't really stayed in touch with him very much since then, but he was always like trying to pull pranks and stuff. I saw his butt more times than I can count during this, where we would decide to watch a movie in my room because I had my own TV and it was the nicest TV in the house. So I had this giant TV in my room where I would play, and I just walk in because I was in the bathroom. Oh yeah, meet me in my room, and I go and he's just bent over. Just he's like, got you, stuff like that. He tried to moon us. We were on the porch. I don't know. We were probably smoking clove cigarettes on the porch. And he like knocked on the door, and we look over and he smashes his bare ass as hard as he can against the screen door, totally cracking it and busting it out of the door. Luckily though, mostly it was but there was one instance where all day he's like, I got this hole in my pants, guys. It was right on the crotch. He's like, someone's going to say something to me. I'm just going to rip these pants off like I'm Hulk. I'm just going to do it because these pants are useless now. And then later that night, my other roommate had his friend over, and they said something to him, something that's a little quip, like, oh yeah, whatever. And he's like, you know what? And he grabs his pants and he rips them off. But when he did, the unintended consequence was he grabbed his underwear at the same time and just full frontal exposed himself to my other roommate and his friend. And I was on the opposite end. So I just saw the reaction to this happen where he's like, you know what? Oh my God. Like he just, whipped his dick out in front of everybody. So it was a good time, but by the end of it, it was time. Like it was, my parents decided at that point, I think a year and a half, maybe not quite 2 years later, they wanted to move back, and we had all changed a lot in that year and a half. I don't want to say that it was like bad by the end, but it was probably a good thing that it happened when it did, because we were sort of getting frustrated with each other more often than we were before. And it worked out too, just because I think my parents moved back. I think that was like less than a year at that point, because Holly and I got married when I was 21, just after I had turned 21. So there was like a brief period where I was back at home. And it's funny, that was such a short time where I was 20 into 21 living with my parents, but it was like a super memorable, really good time, like a last hurrah for living with them. And it was great. And then, got married, and that was the end of that. But I enjoyed the experience. I always say to people, or people that I meet that are thinking about going to college or whatever, it's like, it's a valuable experience living with roommates before you get married. Just living with other people that aren't your parents is a very valuable experience that I think that you should experience once in some degree for some extended period of time, just as a growth thing, learning how to deal with problems, delineate tasks to people. It's a valuable thing.
Where do you want to kick it from here?
Colin, I want to hear about, I witnessed you and your roommate for a very long time in the Kind of Funny era with Greg. And not only that, but you kind of had more than just Greg, because you had your partners and then your business also.
And Mike Mitchell.
Portillo.
People forget about our mystery roommate, Mike Mitchell, that lived with us for 3 or 4 years as well.
Was that during Kind of Funny too?
Yeah. No, he left right before Kind of Funny. He kind of had to leave because we needed his room. Like his bedroom was where we filmed everything in. Right. It was kind of awkward because it wasn't because of that. My girlfriend at the time was kind of like, there's just too many people living in this place. We had a pretty big apartment, actually. I don't know what the square footage was, but it was 3 bedrooms, and 2 of them were master size bedrooms, including one with like its own bathroom and everything. So we were doing okay, but she was like, there's just too many people here, because we had as few as 3 people living there and as many as 5. because there was a
Wow.
time when it was Greg,
Wow.
me, and Mike Mitchell, and then Greg's girlfriend moved in, Christine, and then my girlfriend moved in. She moved out. She moved back in. She moved out again. And then, yeah, Mike during that time left as well. But I was thinking I've lived with I've probably literally had more than 20 roommates in my life, all
Wow.
told, through college. College alone, probably a dozen different people I lived with at different times. And then in the gay house in San Francisco, as I call it, as we call it many times on this show, I lived with a bunch of people there. And so, yeah, and then I lived with Greg for many years, probably 5 or 6 years, I would say. And it's funny because that was just a fact of life. It's interesting. I mean, it's just the reality of the situation. We like to talk candidly, I guess. It's like, as I've gotten older and now that I've made more money than I used to make when I lived in San Francisco by a substantial amount and have my own house and all these things, it's almost like you don't realize in the moment, like, this is just your fact of life, but you don't actually have to live like this. But when I was living that life, that was my only choice. Right. It's like, I'm not going to be able to live within fucking 100 miles of San Francisco without a roommate. So it's not even about living in the city. And I wanted to stay in the city, and I did stay in the city, but it was about people living out in fucking Walnut Creek or something, taking a half broken BART, struggling to get to the Embarcadero in San Francisco. And they're living with 5 people out there. And I'm really grateful that I don't have to live like that anymore, because you do accept it as a way of life, but it does wear out. And I went through it much older than you guys had gone through it in your own lives. And I think that's just through urban living and all of that. But there's a codependency about roommates too. I've talked about how I definitely stayed in one relationship specifically in my past, where it was like, that was because we lived together, and like, what were we going to do? What the fuck are we going to do? Both of us. And I think we both kind of said that and knew that without really having said it. But I've had some interesting roommates, and, being a young 22-year-old coming out to San Francisco and living in the buildings in San Francisco with notoriously thin walls, because there's a lot of buildings in San Francisco, older ones especially, are not insulated, which keeps them cool. And because there's no really AC and stuff unless you have a new building, because you don't really need it there. But yeah, hearing, rampant gay sex when you're 22, 23 years old happening, across the loose leaf paper, separating your room from your neighbors and all of that, and being introduced to all of those things. I remember having a roommate, Alexander was his name. And I remember him so well because he was like the snooty white guy, and he was fine, but he was weird. And I remember him being like, "Oh, so do you go by Alex?" And I think I've said this before. And he's like, "No, my parents named me Alexander." And then he kind of tried to, so the 2 gay guys that own the house, I've talked about them. They were like a couple at one point, but then they kind of just became platonic friends, and then just never, and just like lived together. It wasn't a put on at all. Like they were sleeping with other dudes and doing whatever. Like they were just always together as boys, and they invested in all these different things. And the house was one of their, was it was one of their spots. By the way, I have to say this real quick before I move back into the story. It's said in hindsight, during the 2008 financial crisis, I lived in that house. It was on South Hill Boulevard in Daly City, the border of Daly City in San Francisco, looking into the city. Fucking dope. Amazing house. Absolutely amazing house. Like the whole living room was this glass like window basically, and you could just see the city. And they were really hard up because one of them got laid off from Levi, and then the other got laid off from Wells Fargo, and they offered me a third of the mortgage for something like $200,000 or something like that. I'm like, I can't. I was 23 or 24, and I'm like, I can't. Like it's not. And I'm like, oh,
Could have spun that into gold, my friend.
Yeah, I was so mad, but that Alexander guy tried to pit me against different people, and I told the story about how I lived with a guy. He was bi, so there was a straight James, a gay James, and a bi James that all lived in the house at different times. And bi James was a dickhead, and he actually said something to my ex that I dated at that time. It was a long time ago. It was like 2008, 2009. Like something mean to her, and she was quiet and kind. Like we didn't ultimately work out, but she was a nice person, and I that really bothered me. And that was the only time in my adult life I basically was like, I'm gonna kick the shit out of you if you ever say something like that to her again. And can you imagine someone like me saying that to you, especially in that era when I was like scrawny, I probably had like a pot belly, and I'm like, struggling to make ends meet. So I always remembered that because that was very un-Colin, especially as an adult. I used to rage out in hockey all the time. That's for another day though. And then I'm trying to think moving forward. I just lived with a bunch of people at college. I told you guys my freshman college roommate tried to commit suicide when he was my roommate, and I walked in on him cutting himself and all this kind of stuff, and he got removed. Ooh. And so I lived by myself for like most of my freshman year, and then another dude moved in who was a football player, and he had this protein powder that smelled like syrup, and it made everything in our room smell like syrup. And I used to get so mad. I'm like, you got to get this shit the fuck out of here. So I remember that guy. But I've also met people. I lived with Ramon, who we ended up obviously becoming thick as thieves. My really good friend Doug, I met as my roommate, and he's going to be at the wedding. He's a good friend of mine. So there was good stories too. And living with Greg was a harmonious and interesting time. About living with person, having a desk next to them at the place you work and doing shows together and all of that, kind of living that more brotherhood style thing, not really getting tired of each other. We eventually obviously did, but during that time, people used to say to us, like, aren't you guys sick of each other? Like people would say that all the time to us, because we were walking into work together, and then we like sit next to each other, and then we like go into the studio to record together, and then we'd go to lunch together, and then we'd get in the train and go home together, and we'd live together. And people were like, what are you guys doing? But it really worked for a while. But these days, as I've gotten older and now own this house and all that, it's like, man, what was I doing? But you just do what you got to do. You know, I just couldn't imagine. I said this recently to someone. Actually, I was talking to my friend Nate, who works at Google now, but we worked at IGN together for many years. And he was talking about the wedding, and we were going. First of all, it'll be cool to have Nate maybe on the show one day, because he's got a really interesting history at Apple, Google, Xbox. He was at ID at Xbox and all of the rest. And he's an interesting cat. But what was I saying about him? I forgot already. I was distracted. I was saying something to him. What was it? Oh, I don't remember. It doesn't matter. But we were going back and forth. And anyway, it's interesting to think that without those living situations that I was kind of foisted upon, that were just natural. Like, you're in college. Of course you have a roommate. You're 22 years old and you make $40,000 a year and you have no fucking money. Of course you're going to live with someone and all that. And like, it becomes this pressing issue of reality, but you don't have to live like that if only you are willing to not live in urban areas. And I became to eventually embrace that, and boom, here you are today without having to live with roommates. Dag, I know your situation's similar. I've known many of your roommates, of course.
Yes,
and I know I've and some of your roommates, you know, so you became friends with some of your roommates as well. But your roommate Ducky is always the one I think about the most, who was just a huge nerd, and he was really, really nice, but he had everything, and it was so cool. Like, he just had everything. And yeah, I was like so enamored with that guy, because I was like,
and he was
moly.
Like 10 years older than us. You know, so if I was already late going to college because I had just turned 20. He was in his early 30s. So he was like, he had already been an experienced EMS. Like, you know, he drove an ambulance in New York. Like, he was already like established with, like, I don't know if he had a pension because he went out on disability. But yeah, he was an interesting cat. Never tell anybody his age. And he kind of blended in with the kids in a way. But he was interesting. I mean, my roommate period spanned, I guess, most of 5 years, a block of 5 years, all in Philadelphia, all during college, all during art school. Never had a roommate on either end of that sort of experience. And again, just like a really colorful era, and a lot of stories and a lot of characters. You know, I could talk about Ducky. I could talk about Crazy Alex. I could talk about the Nerd House era, which is, the Nerd House is a topic unto itself. And that was my last sort of experience before I left Philly for my first job. But I'll tell you guys one story about one specific roommate, which is super interesting and I hope funny and kind of still shrouded in mystery, because this is a really weird guy and a really weird experience I had with this specific person. So I moved to Philly, 1994. Right. And I leave Philly. I come early 94 and I leave very late in 98. So it was really almost 5 years of this. And I was kind of fortunate because two of my good friends that I grew up with on Long Island, that I probably met both of them. We went to 3 separate school districts, but I probably met both of them, it's fair to say, in junior high around that age through skateboarding. Chris and Brian, and I knew them very well. And they were getting ready. Chris was a year older than me in school, and Brian was my age, class of 92. So they both left for art school in Philly, and I took a year off and stayed home on Long Island. But I would visit them often, and they were already going to the same school that I would be going to, and they kind of turned me on to it. Also, I mean, a big draw for us back then was, I mean, I say this a lot, but it was really a big part of why I left New York to go to art schools, because skateboarding on the East Coast was really blowing up in the mid-90s, and Philadelphia was the mecca of skateboarding, not only nationally, but kind of on a global scale. And Love Park, specifically downtown in Philly, was like the place. It would later be what sort of like Barcelona would become, in San Francisco, of course, in the 80s and 90s. Philly was like the hub of skateboarding. And so we thought we would go to art school, but our primary focus was being part of the skate scene there. And so very quickly after visiting those guys a couple of times in Philly, I didn't really know Philly that well. I was like, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to follow in these guys' footsteps. I'm going to go to school here for animation. Perfect. I'll be able to skate. Beautiful. So I get out there. Now, of course, my two friends are already established in like a roommate situation, so I couldn't room with them, at least not right away. We had plans to kind of switch it up in the second or third year, but I went in to a situation, and it was kind of cool in retrospect, because my art school had this deal set up with student housing and the dorms where we just kind of integrated into like a commercial residential apartment complex in a really nice part of town, in sort of North Philly, the cusp of North Philly, Ben Franklin Parkway, the Art Museum District. So this specific apartment building, or this apartment complex's claim to fame was, in Rocky, when he runs up the stairs and then turns around and faces the city, he's looking down the parkway. My apartment complex is right on the right-hand side there. It's like a stone's throw from the Art Museum, from the Rocky stairs, a 2-minute walk probably, right? So it's a beautiful part of town, very pastoral and beautiful, and everything's trees. It looks kind of like Central Park a little bit, like a nice little section of the city nestled there. And that's where student housing was. So we just kind of moved into these buildings and integrated with the residential established older people. There was a doorman. I think that complex had its own supermarket and restaurant. It was really kind of high end. It wasn't your typical dorming experience. It was pretty nice. It was pretty posh. So I get there, and I guess because I filled out that whole thing about, dorming, and they give you a questionnaire that you have to fill out about interests and all that sort of thing. So I got put into this apartment complex. The downside was it was a studio apartment. So it was one big open space, kitchen, living area, beds. It was like one big room. And they put me in with this dude. And I guess the thinking was, okay, it's two dudes, both from New York, and they both like hip hop music. But this guy hated my guts. First of all, I'll explain. I was from Long Island, obviously. He was from Staten Island. Big dude, probably in his late 20s, had already served in the Marines for 4 years. I think he was probably of Jamaican descent, of Jamaican background, and he was also married. He was already married. So he was much older than me by about 10 years. And I thought it was kind of cool at first. We kind of bonded over hip hop and Wu-Tang and all that kind of stuff. But the dude quickly just hated me. I don't even know why. I liked him. I thought it would be great, except for the fact that he hated me and his wife hated me. His wife would come visit from Staten Island. Sometimes that would dovetail with my girlfriend visiting from Long Island. It just was kind of it just wasn't going to work out. He just hated me. I don't know why. It was kind of interesting in retrospect, because I tried to never be there because it was so uncomfortable. And I never even cooked in that place. I was living solely on Wawa. I was out skating or at school. And when I was home, I was like huddled up with my Super Nintendo in my little nook. I really tried to stay low key, but for some reason, this guy just couldn't stand me. So I had to go to my director of student housing at school and be like, I don't know what's going on with this cat, but like, he has a problem with me. So she's like, all right, we're going to put you in a different apartment, and it's probably going to be in a different building. This was like a 4-building complex. I mean, literally probably 4 buildings, 40 stories each. So there was plenty of space. So she's like, I'm going to put you in a different building. So I said, all right. So I moved out of this uncomfortable situation with this guy. And I remember it was the building. Let's say I was in the East Tower. They were moving me to the South Tower. And again, like really lovely buildings with beautiful like breezeways and lounges in the lobby, 24-hour doormen, nice elevators. Like it couldn't have been any nicer. So I get all my gear. I don't have that much shit. Got a couple of friends to help me move. And I just think I'll go over. I'm moving in on a Saturday. Let me go in on a Friday. I'm just going to knock on the door and say hello and just make sure it's cool. I'm moving in tomorrow and just give them the heads up. So I go up to, let's say, whatever it is, a 17th story of this apartment building, and I knock on the door. And I hear latches unlatching for it feels like 3 minutes. So you just hear it going down and you hear the thing. I'm like, what is happening? Like, we're not in South Philly. We're not in the projects. Like, this is a high-rise apartment building with security and everything. It was the weirdest thing. Dude opens the door a crack. And he's like, what is it? And I see behind him, I just see like a sliver of his face, and I see behind him, it's completely dark. And it's the middle of the day. And I'm like, what? All right, what am I getting myself into here? So I'm like, I explain the whole thing. I'm Dagan. I'm moving in. I'm your new roommate. Now, this has to be other Art Institute students. This isn't, you know what I mean? This isn't some weird stranger. I'm just knocking on his door. So he's like, oh, let me get dressed. So, and that's the other thing. I can see the guy has no shirt on. I can't really see below his torso, but so he shuts the door. I hear it lock, goes and gets his clothes on. He opens the door. There's a dude standing there. I would probably say maybe a few years older than me. He's got a baseball bat in his hand, like an aluminum bat in his hand. And now he's dressed and he's like, hey, I'm Gray. So his name was Gray. I still don't know if that was his actual God-given name or if that was a nickname. I have no idea. So I'm like, hey, what's going on? He's like, nice enough, dude, but it was really weird. So the apartment, super dark. All the curtains and blinds are drawn. And he's just like, oh, you're the new roommate, blah, blah, blah. He's like, me and Richie, I don't know if Richie was there or not, are in this bedroom. And, good news for you, you'll have the back bedroom all to yourself. Now, the 2-bedroom apartments, at least for our purposes in school, were meant for 4 people. So 2 people shared each bedroom. But it was a nice space, a detached kitchen, a separate living area, a little eating area, like a little dine-in breakfast nook, and then 2 detached bathrooms. And I think 2, a bathroom for each bedroom. So it was much nicer than the studio setup I was coming from. And I was psyched because I'd be having my own bedroom. But he was like, here's the deal, though. He's like, no one answers the door except for me, and no one answers the phone. And I'm like, all right, what? That's fine. And he's like, I'll introduce you to Richie. And, well, I'm not going to explain, but no one ever answers the door. And no one answers the phone. He was like, I have a fridge full of food. He had like cases and cases of Costco, like bulk shit, juices and waters. And I remember the freezer, he had like a giant mega pack of like frozen egg rolls. And he was like, you could help yourself to whatever's here anytime. The food's on me, but you have to like abide by the rules of the house. Don't ever bring anybody over without telling us. Don't answer the phone. Don't answer the door. Well, it turns out, make a long story short, this guy was a drug dealer.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
And I really didn't ask any questions, but it was really weird. And I got wind that he had knives and he had guns and he had the whole thing. But here's the kicker. This is the weirdest thing. I'm not even sure Colin knows if I ever told Colin this. I finally meet this guy, Richie. He's like, oh, I'm going to introduce you to Richie. The next day when I'm moving in, Richie's there with him. They're sitting in the bedroom and they're smoking. They're just smoking they're just smoking weed, which is what they would go on to do constantly. I don't think these guys even ever went to class. They would just sit in Gray and Richard's bedroom and they would smoke weed. But here's this guy, Richie. I'm like, holy shit. I went to fucking high school with this guy and I knew him my whole life. It was this guy, Richie, who I knew from when I was 4 years old. I never really knew him that well. He was kind of a rando in my life. But I known him my entire life. Here comes this guy from the same area of Long Island. He's my other roommate. I'm like, you got to be fucking kidding me. This can't get any weirder.
Did he recognize you, obviously? I mean,
yeah, right away. He's like, I knew it had to be you, Dagan. Like, there's only one Dagan type of thing. Now, this is like, we're thinking about Eastern Long Island, 100 and something miles away in Philadelphia. What are the chances that this was going to happen, right? So it ends up getting to the point where it gets so uncomfortable being there that I'm just like, I don't feel comfortable. It's all hours of the night. He's answering the door constantly. He's always got his bat. He kind of stood out because he was one of the only students I knew who had a car. He had a real pimped out Cadillac, like a late model Cadillac that he kept in the parking garage, but he never used it, and it was just a weird look. And I would tell my friends, like, we got to kind of figure this out because I got to get out of here. I have to kind of make an exit because it just feels like these guys never leave. They're always there. I never get a moment of peace. They're blasting their music to all hours of the night. I don't get to sleep. It seemed like they weren't going to school. So eventually I got out of that situation, but it was so weird because it's one of those things in my life where there's still so little answers. Like, I still have no idea what this guy was. I have no idea where he was from, what his real name was, what his last name was, his background. I don't even know what his major was. I don't think he was in animation, but he might have been in industrial design. He might have been a graphic design student. I'm not sure. But that was the kickoff, basically, of my roommate situation, which was harrowing because I guess it was good on some degree because it was very hands off. Like, they never bothered me and I never bothered them. I just didn't know what the situation was.
What a missed opportunity, dude. If I lived with the fucking weed dealer in college.
I'd love to know where he was. Like, yeah, that's another thing. I didn't smoke.
This is awesome. Yeah.
I couldn't benefit.
Well, dude, because I lived with and I've talked about it in the past. I lived with a guy who sold drugs in college for a little while, and he sold not marijuana. And
oh, wow.
It was a little harrowing and scary to think about it, but it was just out of sight, out of mind. Like, I knew he was doing it, but I had no idea. And other people lived there. It's like, ignorance was bliss. It's like, I don't want to know anything about what you're doing. I don't give a shit. You always have the best weed. I appreciate that. But yeah, if I was living, it's like what you could have extracted out of that was saying, like, you can give me a little bit of this bud as well,
Mm-hmm.
And I'll
grease my palms with some cash.
Yeah, I'll stay a little ignorant of the situation. But yeah, I mean, it's scary to think about it as an adult. But when I think about myself being like, let's say 20, and they're like, oh, you're randomly living with the fucking building's weed dealer, I would have been like, this is like.
I got in trouble for having a cat later on. You weren't supposed to have cats in that building, in that complex. And it got serious. Like, it was like to the point where they were going to kick me out. And I felt like saying, are you serious? Do you know what I dealt with? But I didn't. I never named him. I never called him out or anything. Because, again, I didn't really have any answers. I wonder, now, dealing weed back then, let's say the mid-90s, it was a very different thing back then. It was dangerous. But I wonder if he wasn't a higher profile drug dealer. And I also wonder if somehow he weaseled his way into being a student at this school, right? He's kind of like greased in now to this art school vibe. And the people there who all smoke weed, right? 90%. Just not me. And I wonder if that was like his opportune thing to kind of like, it was a business move, in other words. He had no intention of actually going to school for graphic design, right? He was just kind of, it's kind of ingenious.
Yeah, it's like very entrepreneurial,
and his trade-off was have all the frozen Costco egg rolls you want, which I did help myself to his food. Don't get me wrong. I was dirt poor, but that was the trade-off. Your silence for my frozen egg rolls.
It seems kind of fair too, though, dude, because the fewer questions you ask, the more embroiled in it you are if he gets busted. Seriously. I
couldn't get in with a key. I had to knock, and I had to hope somebody was there. Because he had, I'm serious, 10 different, it was like The Wire.
It's just, but it's like so conspicuous too. Like, the dealers I knew were some of the dumbest, like, not my friend. Well, he was dumb in his own way too. And these guys weren't necessarily dumb, but they were flagrant, right? I've told the story about how this dude lived on the 5th floor of this building. You would call him outside on his cell phone. He'd be like, he'd look out his window and be like, "Oh, hey, Colin," and then he'd just drop his keys, and you'd catch them, and then you would just let yourself into the building and go upstairs, and then you'd leave 5 minutes later.
That is amazing.
Just shit like that. I always think about. Or like the dudes that I knew that sold weed, but they like loved smoking weed so much that they were really having a hard time like turning a profit, and they were looking to sell these kinds of things. It's just so all these different characters. Like I think about the people that sold me weed, and I'm like, these are people that are like out there today that are just doing their thing. They like got away with it, you know?
Hopefully.
But I never got in. I would be way too paranoid to have done something like that.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
Like it goes into what Dad told me. He's like, I know you're not really doing anything wrong because you have this really crushing conscience of needing to tell people when you're doing something wrong. And
my daughter's like that. Your niece is like that.
Yeah. And he's like, I've always known that about you. And I'm like, yeah, it is true. It keeps me honest to a certain degree. Like I'm not really getting into any shit you don't know about, you know? It's too dangerous. I'd rather I just work the straight and narrow to make the money, you know?
Yeah. It's not worth it. It's not worth the risk.
Definitely not.
Yeah. And I never saw them. Once I moved out of that apartment, that's how I know they weren't like straight up on the level art students, because I never saw them once I moved out of that building, and they were engaged in 4-year degrees like I was. So it's like, where are these people? They just stayed there. But the fact that one of my high school classmates was tied into the whole thing, it just couldn't get any stranger than that. Mm-hmm. You know, and he got pulled into this guy I grew up with got pulled into this guy's orbit. It was just, I'll never forget it. And again, so many things left unanswered. I have no idea what the hell is going on. I only knew that I think I was afraid because there were promises or threats of firearms. And I was like, that scared me enough to be, and it was very believable given this guy's, you know, given the optics. It was like, yeah, I could see this guy having a gun for sure. He's definitely unhinged. And this is not on the up and up. The fact that it was happening also, it would have been weird if I just moved into an apartment somewhere downtown. But the fact that it was happening in the dorms, I've never heard of anything like that since. You know, but
oh my God, dude.
Yeah,
People selling fucking every goddamn thing you could possibly imagine out of Whitehall.
In the dorms, really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, at a Whitehall when I was a freshman in Northeastern. There's an apothecary on every fucking floor in that place, probably, you know?
It's good commerce, right? You don't have to go get a job at McDonald's or whatever.
Yeah, that was the thing, though, is that I don't know what it would be like to, first of all, weed is not really, it's not illicit anymore. And it was really borderline not illicit when I was coming in college, too. It was just, in Massachusetts, it was incredibly illegal. But but the culture about it was not very crushing. So I'm not pretending like it was. But I always loved the rules and the delineations. I wonder how people do it today, because back then you had to like call and be like, "Are you home?" Like, "Hey, it's Colin. What's going on? I was wondering if you're around tonight." You know, and then you have to go up to Mission Hill or something and walk up there and exchanging your money for these goods, and like the way it was, and I've never done hard drugs, so I couldn't imagine like how much more treacherous it was. Like my friend I knew that sold some things, like I never saw the transactions. I don't know what specifically he was even selling. And so it's like, that's like a whole nother level of it. But I wonder what it is now with text messaging and all of that, but there's like so many ways to get caught. See, that's like that should keep the smart person honest, is just that it's really not going to be easy to get away with anything anymore.
Yeah. From
your murders and on your assaults and all those, all the way right on down to anything that has ping a cell phone tower, or you got a text message, or you sent a fucking email, or your app pings some server. It's like, come on, man, you're done. You're toast.
You're leaving a footprint.
Yeah.
Trail of breadcrumbs, all that stuff.
Not worth
that
it.
was the only nice apartment I ever lived in. That was the only night in my college situation. That was the ironic thing too. I moved to really shitty, sometimes dangerous parts of town. That was the only nice part of town, and I always felt the least secure in there. You know, 24-hour doorman, high rise, beautiful, you know, gorgeous views from my bedroom window. That was the only place I ever, and I had so much more fun after that. You know, it didn't matter, rundown parts of town, shitty bedrooms, crappy plumbing. You know, that was the nice thing. That was kind of like the launching point for pretty good. I mean, living with Ducky was a little crazy. And Crazy Alex was a little crazy too. But those are stories for another time. But the Gray thing, I wonder where he is. I wonder what he's doing. You know, I should look
He might
him
be
up.
dead.
He's in the pen.
You said he had the bat.
in
You know,
the
he was sleeping with the Glock, with the glizzy.
Yeah,
Ready.
He
Liz.
did have the gat. He
Yeah.
did. He,
Yeah.
Wow. Allegedly. Sure he
Allegedly.
did.
All right, my friends. That was a good episode of, I was going to say Sacred Symbols, but this wasn't Sacred Symbols.
No.
It's a good episode of Constellation. Good to be with all of you guys today. Let's go around the horn and say goodbye to everyone. Ben, goodbye to you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Looking forward to, I have no idea what, but something later. Weekend.
Just
It's a long
something
weekend.
going
That's
on.
supposed to mean something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward
Oh,
to
yeah.
just hanging out and chilling for the next couple of days myself, but there is some work
Sure.
to be done, no doubt, on my
Always.
end. Dustin, goodbye.
Goodbye, Dagan. I will just be a few short hours basically till I see you once again
We
for
will see each other again.
punching up. So yeah, excited though. I'm gonna try to chill for a little bit right now. We'll see. But
Cool.
yeah, good
Sounds
to
good.
chat with you guys.
Yeah, likewise. And Dagan, we'll see you another time, my friend.
Yeah, something big just happened with Nintendo. I forget what it is, my friends.
Oh, the Wonder Direct. Yeah.
I know.
Oh,
I know.
Okay,
I was
I
being
didn't-
ironic.
Aw,
It wasn't.
dang.
It wasn't coming across. That's my fault. Listen, I still feel emasculated from your topic. I'm gonna go do something manly.
Yeah,
No, I'm not. I don't know how to do anything manly.
That's what I was
Name
gonna say,
one
like-
thing manly.
right. Like, what am I going to do?
Eat a raw piece of beef.
I would do
You know,
that.
something
Oh,
like
like
that.
the liver king?
Yeah. Oh,
Like
did you see that recent video of him? He
Yeah.
looks horrible.
Yeah, he looks like,
so bad.
it's so funny, dude, how bad he looks. It is funny, but whatever, to each their own, I guess. Yeah, I'm going to get out of here too. I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe go for a walk with the dogs. It's only 80 out right now, so it's kind of nice out.
Yeah, it's cooler.
Mhm.
Go enjoy the weather. And yeah, all right, my friends. Well, thank you again for your time. Thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support of all things Last Stand Media, Constellation, etc. Early ad free access on patreon.com/Last Stand Media, merch, laststandmedia.store. We'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye. Constellation is a product of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show was conceived by and is directed and hosted by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is my brother, Dagan Moriarty. The show is produced by Last Stand's executive producer, Dustin Furman, and is edited by associate producer, Ben Smith. All Last Stand theme music is by Ramon Narvaez, and all of our graphics and logos are by Dagan Moriarty. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's podcasts, including Constellation, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest support tier, and we're infinitely grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor.